Oh.
Trying to...
Dear.
Yeah, do you not like that? Do you not think that's a good way
No,
to
I
start?
think that's too aggressive.
Too aggressive. You're saying that something is too aggressive.
I mean, that's just horrendous.
I thought we'd lean into this whole Wario Waluigi thing.
You are all about branding, I'll say that.
Very much so. I am the spokesperson for the show. You're very much the sort of chaotic gremlin that keeps the trainer going.
I'm Skimbleshanks the railway cat.
Hello, listeners. Welcome back.
The podcast. Yeah, welcome back to Kino Inferno, your favourite movie cat cast.
Ooh.
Today, I could have said podcat. But
yeah.
I don't like to go for the obvious joke, listeners. I like to make you do a little bit of the work.
I do think Podcat would have been better, though.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
So today, on today's episode of Kino Inferno, we are talking about two pieces of shit. And,
yeah, in a move that is simultaneously really kind of off the mark, but still completely on brand for the show, we're talking about two films based on the works of Andrew Lloyd Webber.
Yes, the man, the myth, the legend. This was Mark's idea, so
no,
blame
this was
him.
Partially my idea, okay? You wanted to talk about cats, so I thought,
Wow.
how can I facilitate that? So I thought I'd sort of play it down the middle. I could have gone for something like Zardos or something else that's completely weird and out there, but it's like, fuck it. Let's talk about the...
I just want to put on the record that Zardos is worse than cats.
I mean, there are a few films worse than Zardos, let's face it. I mean, I love Zardos, don't get me wrong, but it's a fucking train wreck.
I genuinely hate Zardos. It's terrible.
It's got a certain scuzzy charm that I can't help but kind of like. No, I thought I'd play it straight down the middle and be like, right, let's talk about Lloyd Webber.
Last Lord Lloyd Webber to you.
Is he a lord?
Pretty sure.
Didn't know that.
He's either a lord or a sir or both. Let's have a look. Googling stuff on the podcast.
I feel like we should get a little jingle for that.
We never do any research.
I'm sorry, joke's on you, because I've read the synopsis to the stage play of Phantom and the sequel.
Also, as we're about to find out, I just know far too much about cats, so no research was necessary.
We were talking about this off mic, and you are weirdly knowledgeable on cats.
Yeah, mate, I can take you from book to stage play to filmed BBC version to the Tom Hooper film. I can take you on a journey into the heart of cats.
I don't think I want that, though.
Nobody does. I'll tell you what, though.
It sounds terrifying.
Andrew Lloyd Webber is a baron.
Baron?
So,
oh, that's not what I expected.
yeah, and it says here the Right Honourable Lord Lloyd Webber, so I guess he is
Lord
a
Webber.
lord.
Okay, it's Lord Webber from
Yeah.
now on.
God, he's an ugly man.
Wind in the Willows
Yeah.
comes to mind, doesn't it?
He does, yeah, he does resemble Toad of Toad Hall, unfortunately. But, you know, as we know from his hit musical Phantom of the Opera, it's not all about looks, is it?
No,
Sometimes it's about whatever else the Phantom has to bring to the table. Negging. Mostly.
Negging, grooming,
Yeah.
a bit
we'll
of
get there.
musical talent, I guess.
We'll get... Well.
Well,
Yeah.
well,
I do know someone, well, I used to know someone at school anyway, who was super into musical theatre and all the rest of it, and she told me that Andrew Lloyd Webber is well known among the West End types for having an enormous penis.
I've heard this actually from somebody who worked on West End. Whether or not this person saw it, I don't know. I might try and find out.
Okay.
The mystery of Lord Webber's massive schlong will carry over into a future episode. We have story arcs now. I'm setting these in place.
No, I don't know. We're episodic.
We're serialized, goddammit.
So, yeah, anyway, do we need to say any more about Andrew Lloyd Webber? I assume people know who he is. He's the king of the West End.
Essentially, yeah. Like, you know, I don't think there is really any other sort of musical, like, composers and writers in this country who really kind of compare to his stature, really.
Yeah, and to be clear, we don't mean in terms of quality. We mean in terms
Oh, God,
of...
no. Like, he is not a Sondheim.
dollar in the bank. Yeah, because he is like... He kind of came into his own in the sort of 80s, I guess, and dominated from that, because the two musicals we're talking about were first staged in the 80s, Cats and Phantom.
And I'm assuming those are his two... Well, from what I gather, they're his two most successful pieces.
Yeah, I mean, he's got other stuff like Joseph and his Technicolor Dreamcoat.
Which I hate, by the way.
One more angel.
I don't know what it is about Joseph. It makes me irrationally angry. Like, he's singing about this fucking really ugly coat. Why did they make a musical
also,
about a really shit coat?
I mean, it's from the Bible, Mark.
Well, that's not a great source material.
I mean, he's done it before with Jeepers Christ Superstar.
That one's actually not as bad. I don't mind some of that. There's some really interesting productions of that show, should I say? The movie of that film is... The movie of that show is weird.
Fucking hell.
Mate, I'm very sleep deprived right now, and you're making me talk about the fucking Phantom of the Opera and the singing cats movie.
I'm not making you talk about Phantom of the Opera. You're making us talk about Phantom of the Opera.
Yeah, Phantom was my choice because I'd never seen it, and I'd heard quite bad things about it. So I thought, fuck it, if I'm going to talk about the movie with the really horny cats, then I may as well hear Gerard Butler attempt to sing.
Anyway, look, the point of this is... God, he's trying. The point of this is... The point is, Andrew Lloyd Webber is the big money player of the West End, and Broadway to a certain extent as well. In the 80s and beyond, he was kind of seen as like the blockbuster musical theatre guy. And although his stuff is not generally that well regarded among musical theatre aficionados, because it's kind of... He's sort of like the Michael Bay of musical theatre.
Yeah, it's very schlocky, very melodramatic.
And very big on spectacle. So, like, Phantom famously has the set piece of the massive chandelier, which they swing about the audience and all that kind of shit. Cats is obviously nothing but a spectacle, really.
I mean, it's basically a live sex show.
Yeah, and basically, yeah. And things like Lucky Evita, they had, like, the helicopter that comes down from the ceiling and all this kind of stuff.
I always forget Evita's him.
Yeah. So that's kind of like his vibe, is like he wants... Well, he puts out kind of big, expensive shows that the punters like. It gets bums in seats. But generally, he's not super well regarded among your musical theatre snobs, I guess.
Yeah, like what would be the musical theatre version of a cinephile? What would you call one of them people?
I don't know, but
other than a
Sondheim
cunt.
fans. Sondheim fans.
Yeah, but we like Sondheim though. Sondheim's great.
I think it's what I would know them as wine homosexuals. Whereas...
What, your Lloyd Webber fans are like the beer-drinking football fans? Is that what you're saying?
Kind of. But the ones that go to... They're the beer gays. No, the cider gays go to Lloyd Webber. Whereas the wine gays go to Sondheim.
Do you know what? No, I completely get what you mean. Completely get it.
Anyway, we should get into the films, because these two are live-action adaptations of two of his most cocaine-fueled 80s endeavours. Starting with 2019's adaptation of 1981's Cats.
We're about to begin.
Here we go!
So, 2019's Cats, directed by the once respectable Tom Hooper. I've not written a synopsis for this, Mark. I'll be honest with you, Mark, and the listeners. I am freeballing this because there's no real way to summarise this movie that properly conveys the madness therein. But what I'll say is this. Cats, 2019's Cats, the film, is a star-studded, massive budgeted, Oscar contender.
Was it nominated for Oscars? Nah, surely not.
Well, they wanted it to be, but Sony retracted their For Your Consideration campaign.
I can't imagine why.
We'll get there. Suffice to say, the movie takes place on the night of the Jellicle Ball, Jellicles are a tribe of cats, as I'm sure you're aware.
Well, no, because the movie really doesn't make that clear.
Well, I say tribe of cats, they're more of a feline death cult.
Yes.
And this is kind of the crux of the plot. So all of the cats have gathered to... we see this through the eyes of a white cat named Victoria, who you can forget about because she doesn't have a character. The rest of them are all competing to be the Jellicle choice. What is the Jellicle choice, you may ask? Well, let me tell you. It's when a cat is allowed to ascend to the Heaviside Layer and be reborn in a new life. So that's a perfectly normal thing to make a film about. So the assorted cats sing about their gimmicks for a while and their general personality traits. But the nefarious McCavity is going around abducting the would-be contenders for the rebirth in the Heaviside Layer because he wants to be the Jellicle choice, and he can't simply compete because he's a criminal cat, so he must go where his whims take him, which is toward crime. And also sorcery.
I want that. Stick a pin in that because we need to talk about that.
Yeah, some cats in this film are sorcerers, so that's an element that you'll have to contend with. But yeah, so essentially the plot is young Victoria is thrown out of a moving car by I guess they pull up, but is thrown out of a car in a bag by her, I guess, owner.
The only human we see throughout the entire movie.
Yes. And finds herself surrounded by Jellicle cats. And they sing about Jellicle cats for an inordinate amount of time. And then she's like, maybe I could be a Jellicle cat. And then she's allowed to be a Jellicle cat at the end. But she's not the Jellicle choice.
No,
No.
Judi Dench allows her to become a Jellicle. Whatever that means.
We're not entirely sure what the application process for a Jellicle cat is. I mean, I think I've summed up the plot as best we can. I think what we need to do is kind of move through
the cats.
The different cats, yes. Because I cannot stress this enough, listeners. The plot of this movie is a series of cats appear and sing about their general day-to-day lives.
That is it. That is all this movie is.
Yes. I mean, this movie adds in plot that the stage play doesn't have. So the whole background of McCavity abducting other cats is not in the stage play.
Oh, so...
McCavity appears, and he does abduct old Deuteronomy, and he appears a couple of times as, like, a scary cat. But the whole thing about, he's trying to be the Jellicle choice, they just don't... That's just for the movie.
So he's not a sorcerer in the stage show?
Not that I recall. Although he does look fucking insane. I'm going to send you a picture, Mark, in the chat.
Please do. But I want to say this about McCavity. This is because you have summarised the plot, because the plot to this movie is literally one of these cats has got to ascend to the Heaviside Layer, and all of these cats are just basically going, hey, look, this is me. This is why I should be the choice. But McCavity is, as a sorcerer, like you say, and he's desperate to have a new life. I'm like, but you're a sorcerer, mate. You're more powerful than all of these cats.
Well, I think the implication is that because he's done so many... he's a known criminal, so he wants to become incognito again.
But he has magic.
Yeah, I mean, don't overthink it.
I'm overthinking it. He's a sorcerer cat who wants to live a new life. But I'm like, dude, you could enslave all of these really horny cats.
Well, he almost does at one point.
Well, it's true. He does, actually. The only thing that saves the day is that Rebel Wilson can unzip her skin, which is something I'm still not okay with.
We will get there. So there's the image of McCavity from the stage show.
Jesus, that is fucking horrifying.
What do you think of that? Describe it for the listeners.
Is it racist?
Is it racist?
I feel like it's racist.
I mean, what, towards cats?
I mean, it's... I don't even know how to describe McCavity. He reminds me of Incineroar, that Pokemon. Which is a weird point of reference, I know, but McCavity looks horrifying.
Yeah, I mean, it's...
like some kind of, tribal witch or something.
Okay.
I don't know. I can't even describe.
Can I say to the listeners, if any listeners are searching for band names, we've already provided you with Feline Death Cult and Tribal Witch. So,
we will want royalties.
Get them down. So,
Trademarked.
right, okay, let's provide some context for this before we start discussing the various singing cats who crave death. So
I'm glad your interpretation of events is the same as mine.
So okay, the whole fiasco started life, essentially started life in 1939, when T.S. Eliot, I don't know, if people aren't familiar with the past of cats, the fact that I've just dropped in 1939 and T.S. Eliot must be blowing their minds, but persevere.
Who knew this monstrosity had roots that far back?
I know. So long story short, T.S. Eliot, because I guess he must have been a bit of a cheapskate, used to write amusing poems for his friends' children on their birthday and so forth, usually revolving around cats, and usually being, somewhat whimsical. Especially his own niece, but some of these were written for friends' children. I keep saying children's. It's children. But, so that kind of provides some context for the poems. They're kind of like whimsical little tales about cats, and they often kind of have a sort of like there's a touch of tongue-in-cheekness to them. So using McCavity as an example, because the lines of the poems are more or less the same as the songs that Andrew Lloyd Webber would later extrapolate. The only major difference
makes a lot of sense.
The only major difference with most of them is the song changes like he and she to I a lot of the time, because the cats sing about themselves, whereas the poems are usually a narrator talking about the cats. So, bearing that in mind, like when you look at the poem for McCavity, and it has such lines as he's broken every human law, he breaks the law of gravity, which in the original poem is like it's whimsical, it's funny, it's kind of just a bit of absurdism to amuse children. Then gets extrapolated into this stage show where it's two lady cats sexily singing these lines, which then gets extrapolated to whatever is going on in this movie, with Taylor Swift blowing catnip into the crowd. And you start to see what a bizarre endeavour this really is. Because, again, the whole poem with McCavity... So right, I should say, we're focusing on McCavity a lot, but we'll get to the other cats, because I think it's fair to say McCavity kind of steals the show in the movie.
Not only because he's played by Idris Elba, who is giving a really great performance.
Yeah, I want to shout out Idris Elba because he has a look on his face like he doesn't know what's happening in every scene he's in, but he's clearly enjoying himself.
He's one of the few actors of the movie that I think comes out of it unscathed.
Oh, he just about gets away with this, I will say that.
Yeah.
If only because he's clearly having the time of his life.
Although, I have to admit, of all the cats in the movie, when you see him without any of the extra clothing, he's probably the most disturbing one to look at.
Yeah, it's very weird. We'll get to that.
First time I saw this movie, I was like, has Idris Elba actually got his cock out?
Yeah.
Because I was not prepared for muscly cat Idris Elba.
Yeah, we'll get to that. Because I want to talk about the cats and their clothing, because...
or lack thereof.
Yeah, but I mean, you're saying that, but like cats don't wear clothes, so that's fine.
I know, but like in this movie...
They do wear clothes.
And especially when they're very humanoid.
Yeah, and it's weird because a lot of the cats are wearing like fur coats, which becomes questionable.
That says a lot about Jellicle society.
Well, we know it's a death cult, so...
It's basically like some kind of like Roman cat orgy followed with a sacrifice for the good of the harvest. Like that's
anyway. Look, we're getting waylaid already. I mean, I'm assuming most people who are listening to this have seen cats or are aware of it because it was kind of an event,
Oh yeah, you had to see it in the cinema, and we both did, not together.
Oh, yes, not together, but we both saw it. I mean, I should say, for the benefit of the listener, Mark knows this. So not only did I own a copy of Old Possum's Book of Practical Cats, which is what Cats is adapted from, the T.S. Eliot book, I also, and I should say, all these items were bought for me by my parents, I think. They were trying to thrust cats upon me.
Is that abuse?
Possibly. We'll certainly ring Childline about it later. So I had the book of poetry as a child. I then was bought the VHS of the, I think it was filmed by the BBC version.
It was
Cats,
BBC, yeah.
that has Elaine Page in it. And that's kind of well regarded among Cats fans as far as I can tell, that production. I then was also taken to see Cats at Leicester's own De Montfort Hall. And they really do come into the audience, listeners. So
it's horrifying.
So the thing about it was, when the movie came out, I was possibly the only person in my friend group who really knew what was going to occur. Because people had seen the trailer and were kind of memeing on the trailer and being like, what the fuck is this? What the fuck is this? And I kind of had to tell people, like, no, you don't even understand what this is yet. Like, you're seeing a trailer and you're going like, ew, human cats, how gross. You don't even know what's in store here. Like, do you know what I mean? I was like, you don't even know about McCavity at this point. Do you know what I'm saying?
They're not prepared for McCavity. Like, I'm glad...
They don't even... Skimbleshanks, who's he? Asked my innocent friends. And I said, oh, my sweet summer child. You haven't even heard of Mr. Mistopheles, motherfucker. I'm going to tell you about Mr. Mistopheles.
You were the fucking Willy Wonka of the Cat's Chocolate Factory. That's what you...
Yeah, and I took a group of my friends out to see it after some light refreshments. Wink. And, yes. And I was telling Mike this off air, but two good friends of the show were with me that night. And I could tell when we got into the Uber after our light refreshments, that we was going to be trouble. The two of them were like, I cannot be fucked with this, you know. Couldn't be bothered going into town to see this movie and sitting through 2 hours of what has been described as the world's worst film already, right? By the end of this film, they had seen the light. They had finally understood why I'd insisted we go and see Cats. Because there's nothing like it on God's earth, and thank the risen Christ, right? But what on earth possessed Andrew Lloyd Webber in the first place to take this book of whimsical children's poetry and turn it in his own words into a Pan's People version of the poems? That's a very dated 80s reference for anyone in the audience. But basically, he sexed it up, is what I'm saying there.
To an uncomfortable degree.
Yeah, and it's... Because the thing is, if you read the poems at face value, I don't understand how it got from that to this.
That says more about Lloyd Webber than anything, in my opinion.
Yes. And if you read, so like Mr. Mistopheles is a great example, and we will get through these cats in a bit, right? In fact, let's start talking about the cats, and we'll mesh everything that I'm saying.
I just wanted to quickly interject and say that my experience of seeing this in the cinema was somewhat the opposite of yours, where this was on New Year's Day, because this movie came out December, didn't it?
Yes.
And I've been wanting to go see it because I was like,
oh yeah, this was going to be a big Christmas hit from Universal. This was an Oscar contender, Mark.
Why they thought this was appropriate Christmas viewing, I do not know. And so I was like, I have to see this monstrosity in the cinema.
This film, they thought it was going to be an Oscar play. That's why they have an original song in the movie that's not in the stage play.
Tom Hooper is deluded. That's what that is.
Because you can only win... So, yeah, a fact that people might not know. You can only be nominated for Best Original Song at the Oscars if the song originates in the film. Like, it can't be that... You know, you can't take a song from a stage musical, turn it into a film, and have that win Best Original Song.
Yeah, and for this movie, I believe, wasn't it... Didn't Lloyd Webber co-write the song? Is it
with
Beautiful Ghost?
Yeah, with Taylor Swift, yeah. Beautiful Ghost. Which is conveniently located immediately after the first rendition of Memory. The most famous song.
The only actual song in the movie.
The most famous song in the play, yeah.
Yeah.
And the only one not based on a T.S. Eliot poem.
Yes, which is something that I wanted to mention as well. But no, I saw this on New Year's Day after a night of heavy refreshments. Wink.
Wink.
And so I took a very dear friend of mine. I say took, more kind of coerced a very dear friend of mine into coming to see it with me. And we were both... a little bit fragile that day, so to speak. And so the movie starts, and about 5 minutes in, I look over at my friend, and my friend just goes, no, and just gets their phone out, and just sits on their phone for the rest of the movie, whilst I had...
Ordinarily, that is poor cinema etiquette, but this, trust me, this is Cats.
Honestly, I think, like, he was there on his phone, just trying to while away the time, whereas I had what I would call a religious experience. And when I say that... Let's not forget that the term religious experience can apply to bad things.
Oh yeah, Satan is part of religion.
And Satan had something to do with this movie.
Yeah.
God bless him.
God bless Satan.
Yeah. Available now on t-shirt.
Okay, right. Before we start going cat by cat, which we are going to do, I don't care if we overrun on this episode. I need to get all my thoughts about cats out.
Honestly, I've been waiting for this all day. I've been waiting for your long-winded cat rants. So please, he sees me.
The diseased look in my eye as I'm talking about this. But first of all, I just want to talk about Tom Hooper. What is your relationship with Big Tommy Hoops, the the director of 2019's Cats.
I would need to look at his filmography. I think this is the only Tom Hooper movie I've seen.
Have you not seen The King's Speech?
No, I didn't. I remember it coming out and thinking, yeah, I should watch that, and then a couple of people, mostly you, telling me that it's a bit boring.
It's very boring and uncinematic. There, I said it.
Yeah, and I've not seen the film version of Les Mis because I'm not that. Well, I wouldn't say I'm not keen on Les Mis, but like it's not a musical that I'm particularly interested in, if that makes sense.
I could tell you this about Mr. Tom Hooper. He was born in London, England in 1972. He's currently 49 years old. He graduated from Oxford University after having his first professional short, Painted Faces, broadcast on Channel 4 in 1992. After graduating, he directed episodes of shows such as Biker Grove, EastEnders, and Cold Feet.
That explains a lot.
But, moving swiftly on to his filmography, so we have Red Dust. Don't know what that is.
Nope. No idea what that is.
The Damned United. I've seen this. It's a football movie.
Which I've never seen, but I know, again, from you, I've heard that that's, like, his best film.
Yeah, and I will say, like, I don't think much to his directing of that film, but, like, so it's a film about, like, Brian Clough, for people who don't know, and Michael Sheen plays Cloughie in it, and he's very good. So that was 2009. 2010, you have The King's Speech, which obviously won Best Picture, I think.
Yeah, Best Picture winner that year.
Possibly also Best Director. Let me just check that shit. Which is kind of mad, because that film is not particularly well directed, in my opinion. Like, I've seen it, and I'll say this about The King's Speech. It's one of those films where, again, it's a film that punters like, because it's that thing of... And I'm not... I want to be clear, I'm not being dismissive. Like, I understand that people need relatively light-hearted entertainment in their lives, right? But it's a classic film where you can take... Where it's not a kid's film, but you can take mum, dad, auntie, uncle, grandma to see it. And
it has mass appeal.
Yeah, and there's nothing too risque in it. There's kind of... You know, the most risque scene is the scene where he's saying fuck all the time, and that's like... It's just kind of funny, you know. It's not... It's fine. It's got actors that people like in it. That's the appeal.
Colin Firth, Helena. We all love Helena.
Jeffrey Rush, although questionable gentleman off screen apparently, but
okay, I mean,
it's a fine actor nonetheless. So you know, it has that kind of appeal, and like, it's not a particularly flashily directed film. It's just kind of, it's a stage play really. But then we have Les Miserables, which is an interesting
Miserable
one.
Gits.
Yes, it's an interesting one, because that again was another big Oscar contender that year. It's his first musical, and it is a film which I think is at odds with itself, having seen it a couple of times, because Les Mis really demands being directed as a sweeping epic, but Tom Hooper doesn't direct like that. He directs choppily edited, kind of flatly shot acting pieces. Like, that's his thing, right? He's not like I say, when I say he's a stagey director, I don't mean like he's theatrical in that way. I mean that like his focus is always on getting coverage of the actors' performances, and that's fine. But in something like Les Mis, you need a bit more sweep and a bit more grandeur to it. But so that's kind of
completely.
But this is not the Les Mis podcast. We're never doing that, by the way. People liked the movie well enough. The kind of purists were grumbling about it. There were some dissenting reviews. Give me a minute. I forgot to pull this up before the podcast started. Okay, so here we go. All right, okay, so there were some dissenting reviews of Les Miserables. It was popular with audiences, but the purists of the stage play were not necessarily overwhelmed by some of the singing, because Tom made the curious decision to have all the singing be live, which is obviously not usually the done thing.
No, it's risky, and we talked about Hedwig and the Angry Inch, where they did that.
Yes.
And that worked wonders, not only because, you know, talented musicians and talented actors performing the music, but contextually within the story, it made sense to have it done live. Les Mis, that seems a bit of an odd choice.
There was talk of Obviously, Russell Crowe, God love him. His singing was not well received.
I've seen a clip, and to borrow a phrase from an earlier episode, it's flat as a witch's tit.
Yes, I would agree. But so anyway, I found this review of Les Mis because there are a few reviews that got quite snotty about that film. Nothing quite as bad as Cats, but I think this one's interesting, bearing in mind the film we're going to discuss. So this is by Callum Marsh of Slant Magazine, who gave Les Mis 1 star out of 4.
Ooh.
And writes, this is abridged, but writes, flaws, and there are a great many that would have never made the cut were this a perfectible studio recording, are conveniently swept under the rug of candid expression. The worst quality of Les Miserables' live singing is simply that it puts too much pressure on a handful of performers who frankly cannot sing. Fisheye lenses and poorly framed close-ups abound in Les Miserables, nearly every frame a revelation of one man's bad taste. Now,
Wow.
that's pretty scathing.
Yeah, that's nasty. I like that.
And I really want to highlight that last phrase about one man's bad taste, because I think that's really worth bearing in mind when we get into Cats, because this really is the vision of a deranged lunatic.
Absolutely. Like this, we'll get to like what my actual feelings on the film are later, but generally speaking, this film just shouldn't be allowed.
Yeah, agreed. But so anyway, to finish off on Tom Hooper.
Your friend has the gay condition.
He made after that the ill-advised Danish Girl, which the less said about the better, frankly. And,
he did that as well.
Yes.
Wow, he's got a thing for Redmayne, hasn't he?
Yeah, which again we talked about bad taste, right?
Ayo.
Oh, fuck you, Redmayne. If you're listening to this, Redmayne, fuck you. Anyway.
Redmayne slammed.
Fucking slammed. I'm surprised Redmayne didn't get his ugly ass into fucking Cats. Sorry.
Can you imagine an Eddie Redmayne cat?
I mean, maybe that's why it was too nightmarish, even for this movie. Come on, that's unfair. Redmayne does look like the back end of a bus. But the reason that we don't like him is that he's also a terrible actor. So, Redmayne, if you're listening, fuck you. Anyway, the point is this. That's vicious, that is. We're 35 minutes into the pod, we need to fucking talk about the movie Cats. That's the context on Tom Hooper. So you can kind of see why they hired him for their big, this being Universal, their big, glossy, Christmas-released, Oscar contender musical, because he's done one before. He did Les Mis, and that was generally well received and made a lot of money, crucially.
Yeah, I know a lot of people that really like the film of Les Mis.
And also, all of Tom Hooper's films prior to this, from The King's Speech onwards, were Oscar contenders. The Danish Girl didn't pick up all that much, but it was nominated.
I mean, no one remembers that movie anymore. Well, for a while they didn't.
Yes.
And then recently heads have kind of turned back to it for all the wrong reasons.
Yes, with a cocked eyebrow or two. So yes, anyway, that's that. So Tom Hooper makes a certain amount of sense until you consider that Cats is supposed to be a visual spectacular of, insane visuals. Andrew Lloyd Webber at his most cocaine-fueled. And so that's probably libelous. The legal advice bearer is shaking his head, but let's be honest, Andrew. Are you really going to look at Cats and tell me you weren't off your little noggin on coke? Like, please. Please do me a favour.
The evidence is there, Webber. We're on to
It was 81 and cats.
Horny cats riding around the stage.
Yeah,
that's all the show is.
A cocaine-fueled nightmare. So the show, we should say, is very, very popular. A massive hit. It's primarily a dance show. It's kind of a review. It's a big... Like, when people say, like, there is no plot apart from cats introducing themselves and having a little dance, that is the stage show.
Yeah.
Like, there is no real... Like, there's a little bit of, like, ooh, the Heaviside Lad. They mention that a bit, but, like, it's not a plot, really.
It's kind of like more akin to, like, ballet and opera, maybe. Well, probably not opera, but...
Yeah. Like, it's a dance show, and it's all about the spectacle, and it's all about the athleticism of the performers, and all that kind of thing. And I think that is why it is popular and has endured in the way that it has, is because, like, it is undeniably a big, camp spectacular, regardless of quality.
With tribal witches and horny cats.
Yeah, and also, like, I genuinely recommend seeing it on stage because you will never see anything like it. It is that thing of, like, it's hard to put into words, but it is quite something to behold. I wouldn't pay, Broadway prices for it, but,
No, but, like, if you've got a spare afternoon and you want to be scarred, it's definitely a good way to spend your time.
That's the way to do it. So, anyway, all this to say, 2019's Cats comes with some interesting baggage. And I think before we go from cat to cat, which we are definitely about to do, I know the listeners are so excited to hear all our thoughts on Mr. Mistopheles and Skimbleshanks and all the rest of them.
I'm glad you know their names, because I fucking don't.
Like, I think we've pretty much established that I am a Cats expert at this point. I know some of the cats that don't appear in this film. So
You're weirdly proud of that.
I never thought it would be useful.
That's what this whole podcast has been leading up to, for you to just spill your guts on how much you love cats.
I don't love cats. That's the weird thing about this, is that I just know cats inside and out.
Ooh.
That's, Cats 29, the film, not Cats the animal. So it's this thing of, I mean, this is just, I think, a product of my unique mind that if I just don't forget things when it comes to culture and stuff like that.
But mostly cats.
Yeah, unfortunately, this is an ability that I've not retained into adulthood. But as a child, I would remember things very, very easily and just retain things forever. And cats, the various versions of cats are one of those things. I can't shake it from my brain. And I've tried.
I mean, I'm not surprised. Like, there's a lot, and there's a lot of truly unique and nightmarish stuff that goes alongside this story of a little sex death cult.
So we should start talking about the cats. So,
because you're clearly frothing at the gash to do this.
Well, the listeners need to know what we think of Skimbleshanks.
We're going to do it as a musical.
We should have done, really. So, Cat the First. We'll start with our protagonist cat of the film.
Victoria.
And I say of the film advisedly, because Victoria appears in the stage play, but is a background dancer cat. So there is a cat who's an all-white cat who dances around and sings, provides backing vocals for some of the songs, but it's not the protagonist, because the stage play has no protagonist.
That makes sense, yeah, because obviously the way the show is laid out, it is like a series of numbers and different performers coming in, so that makes sense that there wouldn't be a protagonist as such.
Yeah, and I should say as well that in the stage play, the cats don't really leave stage once they've come on for the first time, so you will kind of have this element of, like, all the cats that are featured cats. Sorry, I'm laughing that I'm explaining this to Mark, and he's nodding like, yes,
I'm genuinely very interested in the dynamics of the cats.
So, for example, the Rum Tum Tugger and the Mr. Mistopheles and all these kind of guys, they're on stage the whole time as backing cats. But then what happens is they, like, put a little bit more costume on when it's their number, and then they kind of retain that. So it's like, oh, we've identified the Rum Tum Tugger, we've identified Mr. Mistopheles.
Right,
So obviously in the movie they try and move through it as if there's more of a plot. This is kind of what I'm saying. The stage play is so inherently made for the medium of theatre that it's like it doesn't really translate.
I'll put it this way, I've never seen cats on stage, but that shone through for me really quite clearly. I was like, this is something that just doesn't translate to film. Yeah,
because the stage play as well is like a one-set jobby. Like, it's all set in
it's just a junkyard, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just a junkyard. And then, so, like, this is the other thing as well. When the cats in the stage play, like, the mice and the dogs and stuff, but they're, like, pulling out bits of costume from the junk, if you see what I mean. So they'll put, so they'll have, like a traffic cone that they can turn into, like, a mouse head or whatever. And so it's kind of, like, it kind of makes sense in that way, rather than what we get here. We'll get to the mice.
We will, because if you thought the cats were bad,
the mice have scarred me.
You are not ready for mice.
And whenever I show this film or that scene to new people, they look like they are staring into the void when the mice turn up.
Genuinely, I can agree. I watched this for the sake of this show with 3 people who had never seen it before, and I kept warning them. I was like, wait till Rebel Wilson comes along, because you ain't ready for what Rebel Wilson brings to the fucking table.
She's very early doors as well, Rebel Wilson.
Yeah,
she turns up early. And it's like,
I think she's the barometer,
boy.
isn't it? Like,
Yeah.
if you can make it past Rebel Wilson doing whatever the fuck it is she's doing in this movie, and her legion of mice and cockroaches?
Yes.
Burlesque cockroaches, whatever the fuck's going on with that, man.
Some of which she consumes.
She does. Numerous times.
Okay, listen, we're getting ahead of ourselves. Right, Victoria. Played by, in this movie, Francesca Hayward in her first movie role. She is a ballet dancer.
Bless her heart, man. She is trying.
She is giving it a red hot go.
And I think she kind of comes out of it mostly... Well, with most of her dignity intact, I think.
Yeah, I mean, also bearing in mind that, like, she's from the world of ballet anyway. Like, I don't think if her movie career doesn't take off from this, which, let's face it probably won't.
It's already dead in the water. Like, that's a cat that's been put in a bag and thrown in a river. That's her career right now.
But, like, I don't feel too bad for her because, she's got the ballet to fall back on. And people probably won't recognise her from Cats anyway because, obviously... Well, maybe not obviously. One thing to point out is that Victoria is an all-white cat, and so she wears white facial makeup, and the suit is white. But Francesca Hayward is a woman of colour. And this was some mildly controversial choice on Tom Hooper's part.
There is some... I mean, we won't probably go too far into it. There is some, like, weird racial coding in this movie in regards to many of the cats.
Yes, there is, and I think we should sidestep that.
Yeah, I don't think that's... I don't think we're quite qualified enough to comment on that, maybe.
No, because we are whiter than Victoria.
But I definitely noticed there was some stuff that veered into kind of uncomfortable stereotypes of certain cats. And it was... Well, I wasn't the only one in the room that noticed it as well. It was quite clear to everybody that there was some... Because this is an uncomfortable movie, that makes it a little bit more uncomfortable.
I mean, So anyway, Victoria, what do we think of Victoria?
I think she's, to use a phrase that you're very, very fond of, she's very much a non-entity.
Yes.
She's very much the conduit, isn't she, for the audience? She's the closest thing that we can grab onto that we'd actually want to be able to touch. Because I don't want to touch any of these fucking cats. Like, I don't want them near me. But she's at least likable. But that's probably because, she's very naive and she gets guided through this world. She's fine. I like her. She's all right.
Yeah, I mean, she's very nothingy as a character. But I will say she's far from the most off-putting cat.
Yeah, no, I'd agree. Like, she
has a wide-eyed innocence to her, which is fairly endearing.
And I feel like you need something like that in something so nightmarish.
Yeah, she is... I mean, this is a film ultimately about the corruption of innocence. As... Victoria is led from a non-loving home, but thrown out into the streets and falls in with a bad crowd, quite frankly.
A literal cult.
A death cult. So that's Victoria. She's out of the way. She's nothing. Get rid of her. Let's move on to because we have a couple of songs where in the stage play, these first few songs about where they're describing what Jellicle cats are, but not actually really underlining what a Jellicle cat is.
There's no concrete definition of what a Jellicle cat is. I had to Google it.
No, there is not, baby.
And if a movie makes me do homework, shame on the movie.
Shame on that movie. So the first few songs are just that, basically. The background Jellicle cats kind of addressing Victoria and saying, like, we are Jellicles, that's what Jellicles do. And...
without actually saying anything about what a Jellicle is.
Yeah, it's very weird. So that in the stage play is obviously directed to the audience, and it's just kind of an introduction to the play. It goes on forever in this movie. Like when I watched it for this, I was like,
"Fucking does."
Crikey, we get 10 minutes in before we get featured cats, basically. But the first featured cat really is Rebel Wilson's character Jenny Anydots, the Gumby cat. Again, we're not
whatever the hell that means.
Not entirely clear. Well, the Gumby cat, I think, is just a big fat cat who does housework, from what I can gather.
And has a legion of mice and cockroaches at their disposal.
And boy, do they love reminding us that Rebel Wilson is a larger woman. Everything about this character is just like, look at this big fat cat.
There's a lot of really queasy shots of her spreading her legs in front of people and like, sort of writhing around, and it's just so...
they have that, and then they have loads of her just like falling on her ass and stuff, and it's just like, oh, what?
Like, what is that character supposed to be? Because there's some weird sexual stuff going on with her.
Do you know, actually, before we should rate the cats out of 10. So, what are we giving not Francesca, Victoria out of 10?
She's like a solid 6, maybe 7. Like, she's fine.
Okay, so if people are playing along at home, please write down the scores we're giving these cats.
Yeah, please. Like, on Twitter, fucking hit us up, because...
So, Victoria, 6 out of 10 cat. Fair enough. I'll go for 6 out of 10. Considering some of the miscreants we are going to cover in a minute.
I'm gonna go 7. So do remember, guys, over on Twitter, give us your rankings for all the cats. I want to know what you know.
So Jenny Annie Dots, played by Rebel Wilson. I've got to say, Rebel Wilson's presence in this movie... well, first of all, we see that... So the whole thing with the Gumby cat is, by day, she just kind of lies around, sits around doing nothing. By night, she's running the house. And by running the house, we mean enslaving sentient mice and cockroaches to do her bidding. So that's interesting.
Yeah.
The mice in this movie are played by children in mouse costumes, much the same as the cat costumes.
But they look even more uncanny than the cats do.
Yeah, and they also look terrified.
Yeah, like many sort of like, you know, theatre children, you kind of get the feeling their parents have forced them onto this set and into these costumes.
And it's not helped by the fact that their characters are being forced to do work by Rebel Wilson.
Yeah.
She also then... Sorry, Jenny Annie does, the Gumby cat. We also see that she's got, like, an army of sentient cockroach people.
For some reason.
And that's very odd. And not only does she make them march in formation and be part of her musical number, she's just casually eating these cunts. She's just casually devouring them. And they seem okay with it. They're like Cthulhu cultists. They're like, we want this chaos being to destroy us.
And there's a lot going on in this scene.
There's too much going on.
Yeah, and it's so early in the movie.
This is like maybe 15 minutes into the movie.
Yeah, and it's very disturbing. And this movie starts disturbing.
Yeah, it starts weird as, and then it just gets worse. But then the other thing about Jenny Annie Dots throughout the movie is that Rebel Wilson is clearly ad-libbing lines of dialogue at various points.
This is a very constant problem that this movie has, where people like her and some less than desirable actors.
Oh, we'll get there. But so Jenny Annie Dots is often cut to, and she's just saying things like, "Oh, yeah, I can dance like that. Look at me go," and just like dumb shit jokes. I'm pretty sure she does a cat got your tongue joke at one point.
She does, yeah.
She does some cat puns, which is no good.
Yeah, it's also the bit where she says that, "Oh yeah, I can dance like that." What? She's talking to a lamppost.
Yeah, it's very weird.
She's genuinely staring at a lamppost, and it's just it doesn't work. It just cuts to this, apropos of nothing.
Yeah, and there's like a bit where Jason Derulo, we'll get there, listeners, is hitting a high note, and she goes, "Oh, did he get spayed? Because those notes are high." And it's like, okay, cheers.
Like, who's that benefiting? Like, who's that joke for?
It's like, you're dragging down cats, Rebel Wilson. Like, do you know what I mean?
Like, did she look around and see the monstrosity they were all creating and think? Did she think to herself that she could elevate it?
It's clearly a thing where Hooper was just like, "Oh, Rebel Wilson's funny. We'll just get her to say some of her shtick." It just doesn't work at all. And the other thing is, like, the character of I can't believe I'm about to say this. The character of Jenny Annie Dots is supposed to be like an old cat who sits around doing nothing, but then is like, kind of, like I say, running the household behind the owner's back kind of thing. So like, Rebel Wilson is not who you cast in that role, surely, because she's like a young, you know, quippy quip machine, and it's like, that's not right. I don't think that works.
I don't think her performance works.
I think she's actually terrible in this. Like, I don't hate Rebel Wilson, but like, her and another person we'll get to are the worst thing about this movie, in my opinion.
Yeah,
that is saying something.
I can't say I've ever really seen Rebel Wilson in something where I thought she's particularly like a standout, but she is really bad in this.
Yeah, she is just utter waste of time. We should also say another disturbing part, and again, this is cribbed from the stage show, but it kind of makes more sense when it's a person in a cat costume rather than this CGI monstrosity. so she has like an outer layer of fur which she strips off, and there's like a little dress underneath, like a sparkly
It's fucking
dress.
horrifying. It's horrifying.
Yeah, and again in the stage show, it's kind of like weird and surreal, but it kind of works on a level of like, you know, the dancer comes out of the costume and does like a little dance routine. But this is the problem with stage and screen. It's like you already have an element of suspension of disbelief inherent to doing any kind of stage production, right? Whereas film, you have that, but like to a less. It's kind of weird because you want film to be more literal, I guess. Which is not to say that you can't be surreal or what have you in film, but like, what I'm saying is when you see that scene on stage, you're not like, that cat has just ripped off her flesh.
Yeah, like you understand the mechanics of stage and understand like how things are conveyed in theatre, whereas on film, that cat just ripped her skin off.
That cat just ripped her skin off and had a dress underneath, which is weird as fuck.
It's honestly, it's the most disturbing thing in this movie, I think.
Anyway, cat rating for Jenny Anydots. Let's move on.
Oh, like a 1, hate her.
Yeah, I'm tempted to give her a 1. I would go below 1, but I think I need to reserve that for another cat.
Oh, we know who's getting the big fat zilch. Yeah.
Well, big fat being the operative term.
Yeah. Foreshadowing.
So the next cat we're introduced to, we've already alluded to, is the one and only Rum Tum Tugger.
Who is a curious cat? Is that the lyric?
His curious cat. We'll get to it. Played by the one and only Jason Derulo.
Who I didn't even know he still had a career up until this point.
No, mate, he's still banging out hit after hit, this guy. Like,
is he?
Yeah, no, he's on the radio at the moment. Like,
what, right now?
No, but like they're playing, like,
listeners, turn on your radio. Let us know if Jason Derulo is on the radio right now.
No, he's got some singles out.
I genuinely wouldn't know. All I know that he does is sings his own name through auto-tune.
Jason Derulo.
Yeah, and the lack of auto-tune in this movie is kind of weird. I was like, oh, that's Jason Derulo actually singing.
But the weirder part about that is that... So, he plays the Rum Tum Tugger, who is kind of a... he's a curious cat, as we know. And the original poem is kind of like, you know, when you let him in, he wants to go out. When you let him out, he wants to go in. If you offer him pheasant, he'd rather have grouse. You know, that kind of thing. He's like a fickle little cat. And Andrew Lloyd Webber translates this to, he's a 70s glam rocker. And then...
Is that the vibe he was going for?
Well, this is it. Then in later productions, they've updated that to he's like a hip-hop star.
Okay, so to what... They sort of always contemporize his character, okay.
Yeah, I will say that change was not popular among Cats purists.
Like yourself.
I did too much research for this episode, listeners. But anyway, that is the interpretation they're building off of with Derulo, because he's obviously more of an R&B singer.
It gave me Powerline vibes. That's a reference for some of you.
Yes. No, I'm with you there. And do you know what? I actually think Jason Derulo acquits himself well here. I think
he's not terrible.
He's hamstrung by the fact that he has to do a British accent.
Yeah, which he sort of coasts on.
You know what? He fudges it well enough. Because the thing that's weird about it is he's doing an impression of Idris Elba, I think. Like, he seems to be going for his voice.
And I think because he comes along and does his big number after Rebel Wilson scars the audience for life, I feel like, you know, he's kind of like a breath of fresh air at that point.
So speaking of Jason Derulo, I do have a quote here from the man himself. Because he's one of the few actors, by the way, who hasn't just either distanced themselves from this movie or actively slagged it off in the press. But so I've got here from an NME article where he says, for the longest time, I was trying to figure out what's the perfect first role. Cats checked all the boxes.
Bold. That's a bold statement.
You can't get a more star-studded cast. You don't get a more respected director than an Oscar winner, and Rum Tum Tugger is a legacy role, a standout character in a classic musical. Even when I saw the trailer, I got chills down my spine. I thought it was going to change the world. So Derulo is all in on this movie.
And his performance does reflect that.
I genuinely think okay, so there's stuff in this sequence when he's doing his Rum Tum Tugger routine, because this is kind of part of it, is like all the lady cats are like fawning all over the Rum Tum Tugger. Like, that's in the stage play as well, and it's in this as well. So there's weird elements, like they go into a milk bar, which apparently, like, is this Clockwork Orange? What's going on?
That's what I was thinking. I was like, where is this going?
And I want to be clear to the listeners, not a little cat bar run by cats. This is a human-sized milk bar that they go to.
that is patroned by cats.
And it does have the incredible sequence where Rum Tum Tugger goes, "No more milk," runs out and screams, "Milk!" and runs back in again. Which I think is cinema. I think it's Kino. I think whatever you think of the rest of the movie, I think that is true. I think even Martin Scorsese would say that is cinema.
Oh, absolutely. Like, he would be all about that shit.
So yeah, that's Rum Tum Tugger, really. I mean,
Rating out of 10?
I'm going to give him a hard 8.
Do you know what? I'm going 7.5. I'm not all about the Tum Tug like you are. But
it's a legacy role. And, in a
stop
musical.
quoting Derulo's publicist, okay? Derulo didn't write
No,
that.
this is all Jason, because listen to this. When it came out on Broadway, it was the same thing. People were like, what is this? This is something totally different. Anytime that you defy the rules, there's going to be some pushback, obviously. It's an incredible piece of art done by some of the best people in the world. So, do you know what? I'm boosting it up to a 10 out of 10 for the Rum Tum Tugger. Because
What, just for Derulo simping on this movie?
no, Derulo's all in. Because all the other stars of this movie either didn't talk about it in the press, distanced themselves from it. Like Taylor Swift, she didn't let the door hit her on the way out. She was like,
That's very true, actually.
no
yeah.
thanks. Fucking Rebel Wilson and
He who shall not be named.
they I've got a bone to pick with. I've got mad respect for Derulo just sticking to his guns. I think it's a Giga Chad move to just be like, you know what, fuck you, Cats is good. I mean, he's wrong. It's terribly misguided.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But admire him. All right, I'll follow suit. I'm going to bump him up to an 8 for pure passion.
There's an article I didn't read with the headline, Jason Derulo complains that his cat's penis was smaller than he'd like. So,
Well, I don't really know what to say to that.
yeah, moving swiftly on. The next cat. Oh, we should say that in between all these songs, McCavity turns up and causes some grief.
He just sort of magics people away.
Yeah,
that's all he really does.
When he does magic people away, he goes, McCavity! He always says like a little word.
he does. Yeah,
he says
does.
a little
It's
word.
like a Pokemon.
At one point, he goes, Ineffable! It's very strange. I don't know what that choice was. I don't know if that's Idris, Big Id himself, the Drissmeister.
I think it's Big Id. That seems like an id thing to do.
McCavity! Yeah, it's very weird. But yeah, he kind of turns up throughout the movie. He kind of menaces Victoria. He magics Jenny Any Dots away. And he's kind of lurking around in the background. There's also a truly bizarre moment at the start of this movie where we're panning across the skyline of this apparently deserted London, where there's a poster for Moriarty, as in James Moriarty from Sherlock Holmes, which then there's like a lightning flash and it turns into McCavity. And that is...
Yeah.
I still don't...
What's that about?
I don't understand. I mean, I will say that I know that McCavity, as in the T.S. Eliot poem McCavity the Mystery Cat, references Moriarty quite a bit because T.S. Eliot was a big Sherlock Holmes fan. And so there's these lines are still in the thing. So, there's like, he moves his head from side to side with movements like a snake. That's a reference to Moriarty, where he's described... I did have the quote, but it's not necessary. But he's described as oscillating his head from side to side like a reptile at various points. And also when they describe McCavity as the Napoleon of crime, that's what Sherlock Holmes calls Moriarty in the books.
That's interesting.
So, and obviously, like the element of like, oh, he's like this master criminal behind all the criminal cats is derived from that. So obviously, the movie thought instead of making him anything like the character Moriarty, were like, I don't know, what if he was a wizard? I mean, to be fair, the stage play is also like, I don't know, what if he was a tribal witch?
Like, yeah, and honestly, these are the kinds of deep dives into Cat's lore that I was wanting.
Yeah, I mean, we'll get there because we need to talk about James Corden now. So Bustopher Jones turns up. He's a fat cat. He likes to eat. He belongs
He's
to...
a literal fat
He's
cat.
a big fat cat, and he goes from various clubs in London. Not nightclubs, listeners. This is T.S. Eliot times, so old-style clubs.
Brothels.
Yeah, brothels. No, so, yeah, and he's a member of many...
You know he's eating the trash of whorehouses. You know he's doing that. It's James Corden.
Well, he certainly is in this movie. He's chowing down on... Because the character's supposed to be this, like, big, fat, posh cat who goes from club to club, eating the finest foods. Like, that's the bit, right? This is the thing. I feel the need to explain that all these T.S. Eliot poems are bits, right?
Yeah.
They're all just bits. Like, they're jokes, they're tongue-in-cheek, they're funny.
Yeah.
But, like, this movie, I don't think Andrew Lloyd Webber understood what was going on in those poems. And Tom Hooper certainly doesn't. But anyway, Christopher Jones turns up. He's a big fat cat. He falls over and hurts his nuts, and that's funny. And, like, James Corden, man, this movie did not need Corden. He ruins it. He ruins cats.
It's true. It says something where this movie is, like, pretty terrible generally, but he drags it down even further.
He is comfortably the worst part of this movie.
Absolutely. And he's doing his usual bullshit that, for some reason,
and again,
he's
ad-libbing. He's ad-libbing all over the place. You know, there's there's a bit where he lands on like a little thing that's supposed to propel him upwards, and like one of the other cats lands on it. He's like, "Oh, that's not going to be enough to. That really hurt my feelings. You know, I'm sensitive about my weight."
And then he like hisses at the cat.
Yeah, and it's like, what the
and it just
fuck
goes
is
on.
this? What the fuck is this? It's almost Melissa McCarthy talking about wonton level of improv.
It's approaching that, isn't it?
Yeah.
Him and Rebel Wilson are like trying to, you know, go beyond what they're supposed to do with their characters to do this annoying bullshit that feels weirdly out of place. And so much of this movie is out of place and misguided, but that is like the most.
This movie
heinous
should
shit.
be a crime, really. But even bearing that in mind, Rebel Wilson and James Corden are annoying. And the thing I wanted to get to as well is that they did a bit of the Oscars where they came out dressed as their Cats characters, and the whole bit.
Yeah, I remember seeing this.
Yeah. So the thing was they were presenting the best visual effects award, and the whole thing was they did.
Tee-hee-hee.
Yeah, and the whole thing was they did like, oh, as two people who starred in Cats, we know the importance of good special effects. Tee-hee-hee-hee. Which I guess would be funny if it wasn't for the fact that a lot of people lost their jobs because of this movie. The special effects department that worked on this movie, the CGI department, actually went bust because of this movie and fired pretty much everyone who worked there. They were in fact called out by one of the guys who worked there on Twitter for this bit they did at the Oscars.
Well,
right?
yeah, because it's fucking tasteless.
Because we should say, not only were they working right up to the line of this movie being released, in an unprecedented move, the studio patched the movie. So when
They did,
it went for its premiere and it was out for a week, and then Tom Hooper and the studio patched the visual effects and sent out a new version to cinemas worldwide, costing the studio another $1 million or something like that. So it's wild that they would have the gall to try and blame this on the visual effects artists, who, to be clear, the visual effects in this movie are bad, but they are doing what they were told to do by the director.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
and by
it's
the studio.
poor art direction more than anything.
Well, it's poor direction in general, because this is something I want to make abundantly clear, because this is something that makes my blood boil when you see stuff like the other example of this from recent years is the Sonic movie. Like when they released the trailer and it was this weird blue goblin creature rather than the friendly hedgehog we know and love.
Yeah, but that original goblin creature just should not be. Like that
No,
was...
it should not be. But this is it. If you dig into it, the animators, the people who work on, for the animation department, were all saying like, why don't we just do Sonic? Why don't we just do a normal Sonic? Why are we doing this blue creature? But the producers and the director forced them to make that version. And then, again, their company went bust because they had to redo an entire movie. And it's, these things cost billions of dollars to begin with. So when you have to do it all again, and that's why there's so much product placement in that movie, by the way, because they had to get more product sponsorships so they could remake the film. And this is what I want to make abundantly clear. If you're going to point the finger of blame at anyone, point it at the people at the top who are making these stupid decisions. Because ultimately, animators do not have any creative control over the movies they're working on. CGI artists do not have any creative control over the movies they're working on at the end of the day. They are directed by a director, by producers, by the studio. They are just following orders from on high. That's like having to go at the catering man for a movie being bad. Like, this is just someone doing their fucking job. And 9 times out of 10, in fact, 10 times out of 10, when you read about these effects abominations, the people on the ground making the effects advised the creatives against it. And Cats is no different, by the way.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. And I'll, given everything that you've just said, I'll happily say, fuck you, James Corden, and fuck you, Rebel Wilson.
Yeah, fuck right off. Christopher Jones, 0 out of 10 Cat.
0 out of 10 Cat. Fuck off.
Absolute twat.
Don't want it.
Don't need this.
Drags the movie down. Not that this movie needed any help getting to the bottom, but he fucking kicks it down the stairs.
Where are we in terms of cats? So we've got Buster.
I don't know. We got riled up over James Corden.
We did. This is going to be one of the strangest episodes of this podcast. Not to mention one of the longest. Remember earlier today when I said let's try and make this a 90-minute?
Honestly, impossible. Like, given the sheer magnitude of this movie and everything that surrounds it, and your deep-rooted love for cats.
I don't love cats. Well,
I don't know, mate. I'm not getting the impression that you don't.
Let me just say this to the audience, right? Do you assume that anyone who's an expert in the rise of the Third Reich and Hitler's reign in Germany is a fan of Hitler? Because
all I'm saying is, right, if you've got a vested interest in the Nazis, you might possibly sympathise with them.
I guess people who work in sweet shops like sweets.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Sweet shop workers and Nazis are one of the same, is what we're saying.
Yeah, basically, I reckon.
But legally, we're not saying that.
So what have we got here? So we've had Buster for Jones. I think the next ones, I should say, that we need to talk about then. Because Buster for Jones also gets magicked away by McCavity. And we move in on to Mungojerrie and Rumpleteazer, I believe.
Who, I'm just going to throw out there, fucking hate these two.
Yeah, they're a pair of cunts. But
not only that, but the song is crap. Like,
well, this is something I wanted to bring up with you. I should have sent you the YouTube video of the stage version. Because this is something I find weird about this movie as well. It's like the music is really poorly mixed into the film in general. Like, you can barely make out what people are saying a lot of the time.
Yeah, and I think that's why this movie's so hated, because you can't understand what's going on in it, because, like... And correct me if I'm wrong, the singing in this movie was done live, right?
I think so, because that is the Tom Hooper thing.
I'm sure I read that it was done live, much like how Les Mis was. And that would explain a lot.
Well, that would make sense as well, because they've dramatically... This Mungojerrie and Rumpleteazer song, they've dramatically slowed it down. Like...
Okay.
Because in the stage show, it's a very high energy number, and it's essentially an acrobatics number, because the two playing Mungojerrie and Rumpleteazer, they're like flipping around and they're doing like a double cartwheel at the end and all this kind of stuff. Like, it's a high energy number. But in this... God, what am I talking about? But in this movie, it is very slow.
Go on.
It's very turgid. There's no life to it. They're supposed to be a pair of cheeky little cats that nick stuff from... Because they're like low-level criminal cats.
Yeah, like they're like McCavity's underlings. Yeah.
They are associated with McCavity, but they're good at heart. They're merry pranksters. Although this scene has one of the most fascinating moments in the movie where... So Mungojerrie and Rumpleteazer lead Victoria into a house where they're sort of looting the gaff and all the rest of it and having a grand old time. But there's a bit where a dog hears them, and you hear the dog on the other side of the door.
You do.
And there's a bit where this movie, I got so excited in the cinema, I turned to my friend and was screaming, not screaming, but whisper shouting, what the fuck is a dog going to look like in this world?
I had the exact same thing. I was like, what do dogs look like in this universe? And it never comes.
And you don't see it.
It never comes.
Do you know what, Tom Hooper? I will fight you in the streets because of this. You promised me a dog abomination, and I got nothing. Nada, zip. Anyway, Mungojerrie and Rumpleteazer, what are we saying? Are we grading these two as a pair? Are we going separate?
I'm going to grade them as a pair. Like, the scene where they're going around the house, it's not really anywhere near as like sort of mischievous and cheeky as it's supposed to be. I mean, you've just kind of confirmed that for me. They're like a 3. They're fine.
Yeah, I'm going to give them... I'm going to say 3 as well.
I also just hate the song. The song is crap.
The song is, like, it's better in the stage play, but... Fuck me, what am I
like, the song has, like, no rhythm as well. Like,
yeah, it's like, in the movie, it's because I was actually kind of looking forward to this song, having remembered it from the stage play. I was like, oh, there'll be some energy to this, especially after the fucking Buster for Jones fiasco. I was kind of like, okay, James Corden's left the movie, well done, let's get to Mungojerrie and Rumpleteazer, what are they up to? And this whole song, yeah, you're right, it's turgid, there's no life to it, it's badly performed, it's shit. 2 out of 10 cats. Yeah, so that's that. Where do we get to? I'm literally reading the Wikipedia plot synopsis to be like, what cat is next?
If I'm not mistaken, we then are properly... Well, we're introduced to Grisabella next, aren't we?
Yes, but we should say, in a moment that is not in the stage play, Mr. Mistopheles comes to help Victoria out of the house before the dog finds her. Because we set up that there's a little bit of romantic tension between Mr. Mistopheles and Victoria. And, like, Mr.
A
Mistopheles...
little bit.
Alright, they're on it like a car bonnet. But,
They fucking are, mate, and it's creepy.
Because Mr. Mistopheles looks fucking nightmarish in this as well.
He really does. Like
He's one of the worst looking cats.
And also, who the fuck taught that cat magic?
Well, we'll get to that. But, but anyway, yeah, so Mungojerrie and Rumpleteazer, they ditch Victoria in the house. And Mr. Mistopheles has to come back and get her. So that's fine. We're setting up I mean, none of this is fine, but we're setting up their...
No, none of this is okay.
We're setting this... Where did Tom Hooper touch you? And we're setting this up...
Show me on the fucking McCavity doll.
McCavity! So... what was I saying? Some fucking nonsense about Mr. Mistopheles.
This whole film is nonsense.
Mate, I cannot believe we're letting people listen to me talk about cats for this long.
Really, after everything we've done on this show, you don't believe that.
All the credibility I had as the Wario of film criticism is going out of the window because people will now know how much I know about cats.
You fucking weirdo.
I know. Of all the... I'm confident that I could go on Mastermind and use cats as my specialist subject. I would never admit to it. I would never do that. But I'm confident that I would get 10 out of 10 if we did that. In fact, maybe we'll do that. Maybe we'll do that as a bonus episode.
Well, I want you to know that I don't think any less of you.
Well, I'm glad to know that.
For what that's worth.
I'm glad to know
that's
that.
worth.
I want to make it clear as well. I'm no expert in musical theatre. I am an expert in cats. It's limited to cats. Like when we get to Phantom, you'll know that I know nothing about that play at all.
When we eventually get to Phantom.
Yeah, hour 3 of this podcast. That's probably not even going to be a joke by the time this finishes.
No, probably not.
Oh my god.
Right, Mr. Mistopheles. Let's talk about him. The cat that somehow knows magic.
No. We can't get to Mr. Mistopheles yet. Come on, we have to follow the shape
the order of the songs.
of the
Okay,
movie. So yes, you're right. We are. So we mentioned Mr. Mistopheles. We'll give him a shout out. So in fact, the next cat we see, and this is the point in the theatre where I lost my sanity entirely, is Dame Judi Dench.
The hench of Dench.
The denchest stench of hench turns up. Dame Judi Dench turns up.
Looking like she doesn't know where she is.
Dame Judi P. Dench. I don't know if it's P. M herself turns up in this. Oh my god, imagine if Daniel Craig had been in this. Don't worry about it.
Oh, he should have been McCavity.
Oh my god, he should have. But he should have had the accent that he does in Knives Out.
Yeah, he's the same character, just as a cat.
Just Foghorn Leghorn coming in. Now see now, boy, I'm McCavity the mystery cat.
But no, so like Judi Dench rocks up, looking like she doesn't know where she is. It's as if she walked onto this set, was like dressed up as a cat and just pushed onto camera. Like it's actually a little bit sad to see.
She's playing the Charles Manson of the cat world, old Deuteronomy.
Who was originally played by Brian Blessed in the stage show, I believe.
I believe so, yeah. Because it's a male role in the poem and in the stage play. But Tom Hooper is obviously part of the woke liberal agenda and has turned old Deuteronomy, a classic masculine role model, into a woman.
I do also know that Judi Dench was cast in the original London show of Cats, but had to drop out.
Yeah, couldn't.
Yeah, she was playing Jenny Anydots and Grisabella.
Yes, possibly.
Like a dual role, but you know that's like a slice of cat lore that I know.
Jesus, Mike, you know so much about cats. Fucking weirdo.
I mean, I'm so cool, clearly.
No, this isn't cool, Mark. People are going to listen to... Look, I want to make something clear. There are people who...
You're going to get beaten up, mate. That's what's going to happen.
There are people who are listening to this episode who are like, I used to think of Aiden as a cool, sort of sexy guy, who are now listening to this and they've just dried straight up. They've just gone, no. This man knows far too much about cats.
All desert, no oasis. That's what that is.
Oh. Anyway, so, when I saw this movie in the cinema, which I did for some reason...
I mean, so did I. Don't worry about it, mate. We're all there.
Every time it cut back to Judi Dench, I could not contain myself. I was
so surreal, isn't it?
Pissing myself laughing. And it got to the point where this was so loud and it's so obviously triggered by Judi Dench that the guy behind me started getting set off every time Judi Dench would turn up.
She looks confused. She looks like she doesn't know where she is.
Oh, there's a moment in this where she presents her cat crotch to Ian McKellen.
She does. Why is she so horny for McKellen in this movie?
Why is she so horny in this movie?
Like, literally, it's Judi Dench in a basket. Like a cat's basket.
But she's also wearing a fur coat on top of her cat body.
Well, yeah, because she's the leader of the cat death cult. So, like, clearly she wears the skin of those who've been...
This is something that I want to flag up, right? So, in the poem of, and in the lyrics that are retained in this movie of the Old Deuteronomy thing, like, Old Deuteronomy is said to have been around since the days that Victoria reigned. Queen Victoria.
Yeah, that's in the film as well.
Which I cannot stress enough. The book of poetry came out in 1939, so that's fine. There would have been people still alive when Queen Victoria was still on the throne. This movie is set in the year God knows when, so is this cat 100 years old?
I mean, she looks it.
Well, steady on.
No, I'm not saying that Judi Dench looks 100, but this cat looks dishevelled. Like, this cat has been through a few world wars, that's what I'm saying.
Because the whole bit, I mean, this is something, again, that's lost in the fact that the lyrics are way down in the mix and don't relate to what's happening on screen. The whole thing with the poem is that, like, Old Deuteronomy is, like, this old as fuck cat that, like, the old men in the village are like, Christ, is that Old Deuteronomy? Basically, like the whole bit of the poem is like, this cat has outlived several generations of men.
Like, we should study this cat.
Yes, yeah, and like, again, it's a whimsical bit of fun. It's just it's for children. But let's rate Old Deuteronomy out of 10. Sorry. We should say Old Deuteronomy, just in case people are following along here. Old Deuteronomy is the leader of the Jellicle death cult, and has to choose from the various other singing cats which one is going to ascend to the Heaviside layer and be reborn. Which is interesting because we've already had 3 cats who were competing for the Jellicle choice sing their songs before Old Deuteronomy turned up.
Yeah, that's a weird inconsistency in a movie.
So that's odd. But
yeah.
Let's face it, not the oddest thing about this movie.
No, absolutely not. Old Deuteronomy, Judi Dench is doing something. I don't know what she's doing. The bit where she's like spreading her legs for McKellen is one of the most haunting things I've ever seen.
Yeah, I don't know why the hench stench of Dench is in this movie. Because she worked with Tom Hooper before, maybe? Like, what is this about? Like, I guess there is the connection that she was supposed to be in the original cast.
I mean, a friend of ours has worked with the hench of Dench.
Naming no names.
No names. And I have it on good authority that she does not care for this film, as you would imagine.
I believe she said something to the effect of, "It's going to be fucking shit, darling," when asked.
Something to that effect, yeah.
I should say a mad shout out to the Stench Hench of Dench. We're a pro Dench podcast.
Oh, absolutely. And whatever she's doing in this movie, I'm weirdly into it, but also kind of traumatized by it.
I want to shout out, if I remember what video this is from, I'll link you to it. But there's a video of Daniel Craig receiving some, like, it's kind of like a Lifetime Achievement Award or some shit from BAFTA or something like that. And they play like a little video of people talking about him beforehand, right, who've worked with him. And Judi Dench's part is the best part of the video, where she goes like, "Oh yeah, I really respect Daniel as an actor. He's really good. And when he holds me at night and kisses me passionately with tongues, it really does something to me." Like,
wow.
Apparently they are very close, and they're always on the wind up with one another, which I find.
I mean, it sounds like she's on the fucking make with him. Jesus. Dench is spreading it all over town.
I wonder if Rachel Weisz knows about that, but
she's probably into it too. I've seen The Lobster. I've seen The Favourite. She's filth.
Anyway, Old Deuteronomy out of 10.
I kind of want to give it higher than a 5, but I fucking hate that monologue that she gets at the end, where she's talking about how to, because she stares down the barrel of the lens, talking about how people should be like nice to cats and like give them like cream, and she does this weird licking thing.
Fast forwarding throughout to the end of the movie.
So
yes,
weird.
How could we not say this? So we'll get back to the linear plot in a minute, but such as it is. But at the end of the movie, all the cats are gathered around a statue, I guess in Trafalgar Square, as the sun rises in the distance, summoning the end of their nighttime ritual and the beginning of a new day. And Judi Dench just barrels the lens of the camera and delivers like a 10 to 15 minute sung-spoken monologue, which refuses to end. Meanwhile,
it's horrifying.
the cats all around her their eye line is at various different points. Like they're not looking down; they're all looking all around the place. So, what is going on? Who fucking knows? At one point, she says a cat is not a dog,
and then they all repeat that because apparently that's something that we should know and take to heart.
I mean, the guy behind me at the cinema, as this was going on, just went, "Fucking end." Which I think sums up this movie, to be honest. Anyway, Old Deuteronomy, that's that. The next cat we're introduced to is Grisabella, the glamour cat.
Yes, who I just want to say off the bat, right? Jennifer Hudson, she's too good for this movie.
She's far too good for this movie.
Yeah, she's so good in this.
Every time I see this movie, I'm like, just take it down a notch, love, you're in Cats. Because
She's playing it like an Oscar role, mate.
She's hitting it. Well, she probably sold this movie on You Can Win an Oscar.
I mean, I'm just convinced that the only reason she did this movie is so she could do a rendition of Memory. That's the only reason she's in this film, is because you need a powerful singer to sing Memory, and she fucking knocks that shit out of the park.
Oh, she's one of the few singers in this movie, by the way. So
yeah, actual trained singers, yeah.
And she... Yeah, I mean, obviously you've got T-Swizzle and Derulo.
Yeah, but I don't think either of them are really... Neither of their songs are like a proper display of their vocal abilities, whereas Memory shows off what Hudson can do.
Yeah, but we don't get to Memory yet, I don't believe.
We get part one of Memory.
But we can talk about Memory. We're talking about Grisabella, so we can talk about Memory.
Yeah, Memory is the big song of this
But
show.
we should say, it's the big one. It's the one that was a single, obviously, famously. Elaine Page sang this one when she was Grisabella. Anywho, so Grisabella in this movie is implied to have been in league with McCavity at one point.
Yes, they do very explicit. They say that she was the...
Yes, so there's like no dialogue in the stage play, but in this movie they add in dialogue where people are like, oh, she went with McCavity. She's a bad cat, a skanky whore cat that we hate. And
yeah, they really fucking hate her.
Yeah, and I want to say, ladies, even if you are of a feline persuasion, you have to support other women. This isn't on. Women,
even if they are in league with freaky cat sorcerer.
Don't let the patriarchy pull you apart from one another, because, otherwise you end up like Grisabella.
I feel like all Grisabella needed was just one of those female cats to just get close to her and say, rebuild yourself, bitch.
Rebuild yourself, bitch!
That's all she needed.
That is kind of what happens. We'll get
That's
to
what,
it.
yeah, okay, I'm knocking Victoria up a point for basically saying rebuild yourself, bitch, to Grisabella.
Rebuild yourself, bitch. And if you don't know what we're talking about, please check out our Christmas episode.
It's just as long as this one.
This one might be longer.
It might be.
Anywho, Grisabella, so she's a skanky cat that everyone hates. Apart from Victoria, who... but we're kind of jumping all over the place, but we get a few renditions of Memory... the most notable of which is shot exactly the same way that Tom Hooper shot I Dream...
Yeah, as one of
is that the song that Anne Hathaway... The one that Anne Hathaway sings, isn't it?
Yeah, I Dreamed a Dream, yeah. And honestly, it's the best example of direction in the movie, because you don't need to...
He's just doing the same thing that he did in the last movie.
Yeah, but also, you've got Jennifer Hudson singing Memory. You don't need to really cut to anything else. You just focus on that.
I'd love to agree with you, Mark, but one thing that they do add into this scene is CGI snot on her face.
I thought that was real snot. I thought Hudson went full in on this.
That is CGI snot, and this is
how
part
do
of
you know that? How is that? How do you know
that? I can't remember how I know this, but I know this. Okay.
This is another little great nugget of cat's lore that you're just laying down on me, that the snot from Jennifer Hudson's nostrils was not actual snot.
It just shows you what a hack Hooper is, right?
Hack or genius, because I thought the snot was a nice touch.
No. But this is the thing, you've not seen Les Mis, right? So the thing about
has that got loads of CGI snot as well?
No, that's got loads of real snot. Because when she's singing I Dreamed a Dream, right? One of the things that was so notable about that to people is like they made her up really fucked up. I think she actually went Christian Bale on it and lost a bit of weight for this role. But she's like really fucked up and like she's like weeping and like snot coming out of her nose because she's like on her deathbed as she's singing.
Yeah.
But that's not what's happening here. But clearly they've gone. This really worked for Les Mis. Like, fucking won an Oscar. Like,
Snot.
Let's go for Snot. Because also, if you put the scenes side by side, the camera angles are practically identical. Like, it's just like that mid-wide close-up, like the fucking, like, directly to the camera emotion. Somewhat undercut by the fact that, and I will say, at this point in the cinema, we had given up all pretense of pretending to watch the movie, and we're kind of just laughing and making noise. But when Memory came on, the cinema fell silent, and we even at the end went, bravo, well done.
Well, yeah, because Jennifer Hudson's great. Like,
She
really
nails
is.
it. She nails
Have
it.
you ever seen Dreamgirls, for example? Like, she's fucking insane in
Yeah,
that. Like,
yeah. But what I was going to say is that is undercut by Beautiful Ghosts, an original song by T. Swizzle and Andrew Lloyd Webber, sung by Francesca Hayward as Victoria. And it's just nothing. It's fucking nothing. It's just now.
Yeah, it's
because
just
you follow
like warbling. Yeah.
Yeah, you follow the big ballad Memory with just this nothing song, which is like, beautiful ghost, oh, I am sad too, so I understand. At least you have good memories. I don't have any good memories. Oh, so sad.
That is the song. Yeah, that is the song.
And it's like, okay, fuck off. Introduce a new cat.
Which they do in the
They
form
do.
of Ian McKellen as what's his name?
As Gus the theatre cat.
Gus, his name is Asparagus.
Yes,
it?
he is Gus Asparagus the theatre cat. Yes.
We didn't rate Grisabella.
We didn't rate Grisabella. I think we've got to say 10 out of 10.
Yeah, just for Hudson, just for her.
Just for Hudson, 10 out of 10 cat. She's one of the
Yeah.
few actors that leaves this with any dignity.
Yeah, like if anything, she kind of pulls some of the other actors up.
Oh, I'll tell you how I know it's CGI snot. It's just occurred to me. The snot wasn't in the trailer. The shot is in the trailer of Hudson singing Memory.
But
the snot was added in post.
So we now know that Hooper has some kind of weird snot fetish.
Or he just thought more snot equals more Oscars.
I mean, to be fair, like, you've got an ugly cry to get an Oscar, so get a snotty nose on the go as well.
True. Didn't do anyone any favours though. So Grisabella is fucked off for now, but we're going to see more of her. Anyway, Gus the theatre cat comes in, and this is one of the weirdest bits of the movie in general.
Mm-hmm.
Ian McKellen as a cat is bizarre enough. Seeing him lap at milk from a saucer, debasing himself for Tom Hooper, is weird enough. But then he's also singing about how he's a cat who acted the role of Fire Fury Diddle or something, like a horrible fiendish cat.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure what Gus's thing is, but they do imply that he's incredibly old and senile. So
Yeah, he's old and fucked up and reliving his theatre days. But then Mr. Mistopheles boosts his song with some magical special effects. And this is the first time that we really come to reckon with the fact that Mistopheles is also a sorcerer.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. There's not really much to say about Gus. He gets abducted by McCavity.
Yeah.
Ian McKellen
He does also straight up
loses.
He does also kill somebody. Let's not forget that.
Oh, yeah, well, okay, yeah, so we should say all the cats that are being abducted by McCavity end up on a barge where we are treated to Ray Winston's brief appearance in this movie.
I was not prepared for Ray Winston as a cat. Like,
Again, this is one of the many points where I lost my mind.
I was not prepared for that.
And he sings a little bit too. I say sings.
He sort of...
Some music plays
he kind of grunts.
as he talks. Yeah, he plays a growl tiger.
Yeah, who's McCavity's like bodyguard, basically.
Yeah, his little bitch, yeah, who keeps the prisoners on the barge. And yeah, you're right, the Jenny Anydots uses her ability to remove her skin to slip out of the bars, out of the chains.
What a fucking sentence.
Frees James Corden, and then Gus yells, "Fire Fury Diddle!"
And pushes Growl Tiger into the Thames
Yeah.
and kills him. Just straight up kills him.
Weird scene.
Yeah.
We're jumping all over this movie. People said that in our Titan AE one we jumped all over the movie, but this one is like, I mean, it doesn't matter. The people who are going to watch Cats have seen it, and everyone else is sane.
Basically, yes.
So anyway, yeah, that's weird. Gus straight up murders a cat later on, and seems pleased about it.
Yeah.
Let's quickly dash out a rating for Gus. I'm gonna say
7.
7.
I mean, I think McKellen's performance is something to behold.
He really does debase himself.
He does, and it's kind of great.
I'm going to give him a 5.5.
Okay. I just think McKellen knew what this was and just kind of went for it.
Yeah, I mean, I just can't quite... The problem is, I'm so used to McKellen as Gandalf from my childhood, and it's almost like seeing your father dressed in a catsuit, lapping at milk from a saucer. It's like, okay, but, you know, there's an element of, like, Christ, does he need to be put out to pasture? So that's that. Who do we have after Gus?
Is it the Railway Cat?
It might as well be. Let's talk Skimbleshanks.
I mean, he just kind of appears out of nowhere and then fucks off for the rest of the movie again. Like,
yeah. But also, he introduces a new layer of surreality to this movie where he kind of teleports them all onto a moving train at one point.
Yeah, and like the movie doesn't make any attempt to say whether or not that's just like a whole sort of fantasy sequence, or like they actually are there.
So, in the stage play, which is becoming my catchphrase, the cats assemble a train out of garbage, and that's part of the dance routine with Skimbleshanks, right?
Right, okay,
it's the
makes
backing chorus assembles a train, and, you know, it's a whole thing. In this, he just walks out of frame, and suddenly they've all walked into a frame of being on a train. And it's the kind of thing where, like, okay, if the whole movie was, like, you know, cartoonish in that way, like, kind of breaking the fourth wall, fine. But this is the only time that this kind of thing happens, right? Because everyone else, they have to walk to the location they're in, and then they sing in that location. There's no background changes or anything like that.
Yeah, he like sort of tap dance teleports them to the like railroad tracks, where the way it's shot makes it look like a train at any moment is just going to come and fucking
and that's
kill
another
them
point.
all.
Skimbleshanks wearing shoes. What's that about?
Not the only cat that wears shoes.
But most of them only wear shoes in this sequence. Now,
true.
I happen to know that's because it's a tap number in the stage play.
Well, yeah, and you can't really just do that with bare feet.
Yeah, and it is here as well. But again, this is kind of the thing with the stage versus screen, where, like, on stage, it kind of makes sense that some of the cats just have tap shoes on now, because you accept that as part of the illusion of theatre. Whereas on film, you're like, hang on, why is he wearing clogs?
Yeah, like, where did these cats get tap shoes? That's what I want to know.
I mean, I will say the geezer playing Skimbleshanks, no idea who he is. Let's have a look at the cast list real quick.
But like, he's good. Like, you know, he's very good at tap dancing.
So this is Stephen McRae. He is an Australian ballet dancer. So and apparently a principal dancer with the Royal Ballet. So
okay, well,
talent. He is strutting his funky stuff in this movie, but I do feel that Tom Hooper's direction lets him down. Like, we're not seeing a lot of the footwork. We're not seeing a lot of the athleticism, the nimble nature of this man. But I will say this: he has an arse that you could crush walnuts with.
Very, very true.
You talk about a side of beef. Anyway,
like, he must butt dial every time he sits down, you know?
Yeah, and I do think that Skimbleshanks is one of the few songs that is all right in this movie. It has some energy to it, at least.
Yeah, well, you can make out what he's saying for most of it, which helps.
Yes.
Yeah.
And and actually the fact that they kind of changed to the railway makes it better, because you're like, oh, I see. It's
more visually interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, so. Whereas a lot of this stuff, like, they're singing about stuff the cats do, but they're not really showing it. Whereas like this, it's like, oh, he's a railway cat. Look at him on the railway. He's having a wonderful time. And also, he looks like he's having a good time. This is the other thing. Like, he you know, he's a professional dancer, this guy, Stephen McRae. He's giving it some welly. Skimbleshanks, he kind of appears and then disappears. But yeah. I think he's good. I'm going to give him a solid... I'm going to give him a 9 out of 10.
I was gonna go 6 or 7, purely because you could cut him out of the movie and it wouldn't make a blind bit of difference.
I do think the movie would lack some energy without him, though.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you there.
I'll tell you what you can cut out of the movie is the fucking 10-minute dance number in the middle of the film, which we've kind of glossed over.
They do the weird, like, what is, to my mind, is just a massive cat orgy.
Yeah, it's a cat orgy, which, again, in the stage play is this, like, huge ballet dance number, the centerpiece of the play. But in this, again, it's so badly shot, and you're like, you're closing up on, like, random body parts for a lot of it.
These cats look so fucking disgusting that you
don't want to be. It's like dimly lit. It's like backlit. Like, it's very like, it's very weird, and like it's just unnerving. And also, when I was watching this recently with a friend who I hadn't shown it before, I literally turned to the people I was with and was like, "This is the 10 minutes where we can all go for a piss and we won't miss anything hilarious."
Because it's just cats writhing around and doing like scissor kicks.
All 3 people in the room had time to go for a piss and come back, and it was still happening. So, it's one of them. Anyway, we're jumping all over the nappies. We're Skimbleshanks. We've done him. So at this point, I think, is where we get McCavity, who we've talked a little bit. I mean, we've had him all the way through the movie. He's disappearing cats left and right. He disappears Skimbleshanks. But this is where we get, more importantly, the song McCavity, the mystery.
Which is performed by Taylor Swift, whose character is.
I'm gonna not check the Wikipedia. I'm gonna just say her character is Bombalurina, and then we'll check. And if I'm right about this, I will kill myself tonight, listeners.
Okay, so drum roll.
Will I be committing suicide tonight? Oh my god, I'm correct. Well, it's been a good life.
We had a good run.
Shame I didn't make it to 30.
No,
but
we always knew that would be the case.
Something to say about Taylor Swift. She is a big fan of Cats the Musical.
It shows.
When she heard that this movie was... Well, I mean, yeah, she's fucking writing new songs for the film.
Yeah.
But when she heard that this movie was being made, she wanted in on the movie. Like, she contacted Hooper. She was the first person cast, and she was cast as Bombalurina. So what I imagine is she wanted the McCavity song.
Yeah, and it shows.
Yeah,
it shows.
Which kind of makes sense, because the McCavity song is like it's this musical's Cell Block Tango, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
It's the sexy girl song that the sexy
Yeah.
popular girl wants to sing. So it makes sense that Taylor Swift wants that. However, what they do with the music for this song is baffling to me, because I can't believe I've mentioned the stage play this much and in this much detail.
Oh, I can.
So in the stage play, this is like a slinky jazz number, right? And it actually happens after McCavity has abducted old Deuteronomy. So it's the 2 lady cats are singing about McCavity and explaining him to the audience. Whereas in this, it's like Bombalurina is his new piece, basically.
She's a gangster's mole, isn't she? So.
Yeah, she's kind of like the younger model of Grisabella, I guess, is the implication. And she comes down on a moon, on a crescent moon.
Yeah.
And she
sprinkles everybody with catnip.
It's incredible as well, because the music in this, which is not how it is, I checked before we watched, it's this weird 80s synth riff. When in the show, it's like a piano and bass kind of like jazzy little number. But in this, it goes, bwam, 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 bwam. It's like the synth line comes in.
Really kind of overdone, yeah.
Yeah, and T-Swizzle drops down on this crescent moon, and she's like pumping catnip into the crowd, and all the cats are getting high, which is not in the play, only in this movie, because Taylor Swift, when they were making it, made a joke to Tom Hooper about like, oh, they'll all be getting off the tits on catnip. And Tom Hooper was like, what? And she was like, you know catnip, the cats like. And Tom Hooper was like, what's catnip? And they had to explain to him what catnip was.
No, this is not true. This is not true.
100% correct. Please watch the bonus features on the Blu-ray.
No, because I don't own the Blu-ray like you do.
Neither do I.
That is a lie.
No, but this was reported on in the press as well, actually.
Okay.
But so this is true. Yeah, Tom Hooper had no idea what catnip was. And listen, I know Tom Hooper hates musicals because I've seen Les Mis. I didn't realise he also hated cats.
So the fact that he made a musical called Cats is truly baffling.
Well, he just knows nothing about cats, at least. Anyway,
who doesn't fucking know what catnip is? Like, Tom Hooper, what are you playing at?
She's just pumping catnip into the crowd, right? And all these cats are getting off their tatty bojangles. They are getting high as fuck. Mungojerrie and Rumpleteazer also show up, pumping more catnip into the crowd, while Taylor Swift goes on about how great McCavity is. And there's some lines we need to discuss in the McCavity song, because we've mentioned that he's broken every human law. He breaks the law of gravity. Now, the thing about that is, so McCavity can fly.
This is very true.
And this is made clear as well by one line where, because this, okay, so in the poem, we assume that this is comical over exaggeration, and McCavity's just a naughty cat. In the stage play and the musical, and the movie, we have to assume this is literal, because they've translated everything literally. So the lyrics mention that his powers of levitation, would make a fakier stare. So he can fly. That's number one.
Yep.
Number two, this cat has broken every human law. So not only is he's a known thief already and abductor. We know
he's been shagging corpses.
He's been defiling corpses. He's been, not filing his tax returns. He's been jaywalking. He's been
everything.
Committing war crimes, one can only assume.
Yep.
He's broken the Geneva Convention.
He pirated some videos once.
Yes. He's recorded the Super Bowl without the express permission of the NFL.
Like, every law has been broken by McCavity. Like,
The
he's
guy's
just
a
a
maniac.
fucking bastard. Is what we're
And
saying.
well, as Taylor Swift mentions as well, she knows he cheats at cards. That's in the song.
Okay.
He cheats at cards. Which, again, is one of those lines which doesn't make a lot of sense, but, like, in T.S. Eliot's day, cheating at cards was... so, people would play... think of, like, Ian Fleming style poker games.
Yeah. I mean, I just thought maybe it was supposed to be, like, a sort of fun way of referencing, the painting of the dogs playing poker.
No. You're thinking too much about it.
I'm thinking too much about it. I'm thinking too much about cats. Right, okay. Continue.
So anyway, McCavity shows up, abducts old Deuteronomy. Well, first of all, he tries to force her to make him the Jellicle choice, because this is why he's been abducting all the other cats, because he wants to be the choice. And Dame Judi Dench, the stench hench of Dench herself, she turns around and goes, "I will never make you the Jellicle choice." In what can only be described as a baffling line of dialogue. We're not entirely sure what the credentials are to be the Jellicle choice. It's just because the whole thing is you get reborn, right? But they're all singing
it's like
about
9 Lives of a Cat. Yeah,
but they're all singing about how great they are. So it's like, what is this? Like, surely the whole point. We'll get there when we get to the end. But Bomb Ballerina out of 10. What we saying? T-Swizzle.
Do you know what? Considering I'm usually quite vocal in my criticisms of T-Swizzle, not a fan of her music, to be honest.
No, me neither. Not particularly.
But she's pretty good in this. I kind of like the scene where she's just dosing all the cats up. It's a nice sort of change of pace, really, and it injects a bit of life into the movie. But the fact that Idris Elba appears and takes all of his clothes off,
we didn't even mention this.
That's horrifying.
So McCavity throughout the movie is wearing like a trench coat and a slouch hat, and then in the song McCavity he strips it off. And the thing that's weird about this is that Idris Elba seems to be the only cat whose cat fur colour matches his skin tone.
So it just looks like he's naked.
So it just looks like he's a big, naked, buff cat man dancing around with his knob out.
Which I'm sure some people are into.
I don't think they'd like him as a cat, though.
I mean, it takes all sorts.
Yeah, I guess. Well, I actually happen to know that the furry community disavowed this film, but that's another story.
True, but somebody is jacking it to this movie.
Tom Hooper, probably.
Well, there's only one person I can think of that likes this movie more than most.
No, this film is not erotic to me. I want to stress, I don't like this film. I'm obsessed by it, perhaps. But I don't
like how, we watch serial killer documentaries. It's a similar thing.
Yeah, or, when you see a car crash at the side of the road, you have to look.
That's the best way of describing this movie. It is a car crash.
Anyway, look, so Bomb Ballerina, what are we giving her out of 10, sorry?
I actually quite like her. I'm giving her an 8. I like her.
Yeah, I'm going to give her maybe a light 8, strong 7, I think.
Yeah, I like her.
I think for all T-Swizzle has, distanced herself from this movie, I think her one scene, she's pretty good. Like, she's...
Yeah, she gets it. She knows what she's doing.
Yeah, she injects a bit of camp into this movie, which
it's sorely missing for a lot of its runtime.
Yeah.
Because we mentioned earlier, notorious shithouses, Rebel Wilson and James Corden.
Set of bastards.
Absolute set of bastards, Rebel Wilson and James Corden. They try and inject this sense of camp, but it's that, snarky comments kind of shit, and it doesn't work. Whereas, she's sort of just making it traditionally camp, I think.
Mark, I want to point something out to you. The runtime of this film is 1 hour and 50 minutes. We've now hit the point in the record where we have talked for as long as the movie. You could listen to this podcast so far as a commentary track.
And if you can, you should.
And to be clear, we'd be talking over the credits currently.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Anyway, so that's Bomb Ballerina. What about McCavity? Let's talk about McCavity now. Let's give him his rating now.
I like him. I think Idris puts in a really quite fun performance. Again, he kind of airs on the right side of camp. That's his performance is the kind of thing that this movie needs.
Him and Taylor Swift, I think, are the only ones who are coming with the correct tone. Neither of them is much of a dancer, I'll say that.
No, and I wouldn't really say Idris is a particularly strong singer.
Well, they quite wisely give him a non-singing role.
Yeah, true.
He has one... Well, he actually has more sung lines in this than he in the stage play, because he actually delivers the Napoleon of crime line when he appears.
Ah, okay.
But in the stage play, he doesn't sing at all. They sing about him.
I'm probably going to give McCavity like an 8, even though his naked form is truly disturbing to me.
Do you know what? I'm going to have to give Idris... He's a 9.5.
Okay. I mean, I know you like Idris a lot. You're a big fan of Luther, aren't you?
Yes, I am, yeah. I mean, I like Idris a lot in general, but like, I think in this movie... Do you know, I'm going to bump... Do you know, okay, Taylor, she's getting an 8, and Idris is getting a 9. Because I truly enjoy the McCavity sequence.
Yeah, it is the best part of the movie.
It's the one part of the movie where I'm like, do you know what? This is the tone this movie needed to be... Yeah. I was going to say to be a cult hit. It kind of is a cult hit, but like... I think if the whole movie had been in this level of high camp, I think it would have been more successful, because people could have looked at it and gone, oh, I get it, it's silly.
Yeah,
Whereas I think
absolutely.
the problem is, with the rest of the movie, it's like ghoulish to look at. And the performances are kind of ranging from people playing it very, very sincere to kind of weird, freakish performances to kind of the James Corden side of it, where it's like, oh, I'm not taking this cat movie seriously. And it's like, there's like this weird variation of tone.
It feels like all of those parts were, well, they likely were, but it feels like they were filmed completely separate from one another. There was no real sense of unity amongst the performers.
There was quite a lot of
is
filming.
What the stage show has.
Yeah, there was quite a lot of filming separately. I do know that from the making of, and I know that Taylor and Idris filmed their scene together,
and that shows.
Yeah, like there's some energy between them that works, I think. Anyway. We're now getting to one of the more important cats, Mr. Mistopheles, who we've mentioned a little bit, right? So, this is a cat where, because I've talked about the progression from book to stage to film, this is one of the cats who I think is the most interesting to study in that regard. And I do mean study. This is an educational lecture. So, Mr. Mistopheles and the TS...
I'm just in such disbelief of this entire episode.
Mr. Mistopheles in the T.S. Eliot poem. The whole thing is, he's a shy, meek little cat who has magician-like abilities, right? But this is the bit anyway, because so they'll say like, oh, he's been heard in the garden, he's been heard meowing in the garden when actually he was sleeping on the stairs. And it's this thing of like, he kind of moves through the house, teleports around the house, and he's supposedly, like, the family treat him as like, ooh, that thing that we lost, he's just magically appeared it, and all this kind of stuff. And that's the bit. That's the bit. It's cute. Yeah. It's for kids. In the stage play, we have this weird element where he becomes a stage magician. And it's kind of, okay, well, you're translating it kind of literally, but okay. And the one feat of undeniable magic that he does is when he teleports old Deuteronomy back onto stage. And that's a very strange moment, but it's fine. In this... he is a fucking sorcerer.
Yeah, and the fact that him and McCavity don't have some kind of, like, wizard's duel is this movie's biggest sin.
Yeah, that is a missed opportunity, because if you're going to give these cats magic powers, then, let's go whole hog. So yeah, they sing the Mr. Mistopheles song, and the whole thing with Mistopheles is he's very shy in this movie, which is not really his character in the stage play, actually. He's kind of aloof in the stage play, but seems fairly confident in his abilities. We're talking about a cat!
We've spent almost 2 hours talking about cats, Aidan.
Yeah, true. But listen, anyway, look, let's just get through this puppy. We're nearly home. We're nearly home, Mark.
There's still another film left, Aidan.
We've talked more about this than any other film we've covered.
I think we have.
How do you feel about that?
Honestly, fine, because I've really enjoyed a deep dive into the sordid history
This
of
is
cats
unnervingly deep this time. No one, when we announced we were doing cats, was like, these boys are going to they're going to take me from Eliot to Lloyd Webber to Hooper. Like, no one was thinking that there was going to be this level of insight into cats. But you know what? Fuck you, alright? I do my research.
You do your research and then some. You have schooled me on cats this evening, and I am here for it.
Look, let's not get too sidetracked. Mr. Mistopheles, yeah. So the whole thing is, in the film, they're kind of... So in the stage play, when he magics old Deuteronomy back, it's kind of a weird surprise moment, and everyone's like, what the fuck? But it's fine. In this...
That cat did magic. Pay him no heed.
yeah, right. But in this, they're like, hey, McCafferty used magic to disappear old Deuteronomy. You, too, have studied the way of sorcery. Perhaps you can bring old Deuteronomy back. Oh, and it's also made clear, by the way, that Mungojerrie and Rumpleteazer didn't know that McCafferty was going to abduct old Deuteronomy. Otherwise,
they were just up for spiking people, basically.
Yeah, they were up for the spiking, but they were not up for the... They were also up for helping McCafferty's bid to be immortal, question mark? But anyway.
Yeah, we don't need to worry about them.
Move on. Also, nobody shuns them in the way they shunned Grisabella, so that's...
Yeah, weird, yeah.
Which, because they kind of turn to them and they're like, oh, you bloody bastards, but they're not like... It's very strange. Anyway...
Yeah.
Victoria's like, Mr. Mistopheles, you can do it, my man. And they all sing the Mistopheles song. And Mr. Mistopheles tries in various different ways to bring old Deuteronomy back until finally there's a big build-up. He does the final magic spell and it looks like it's failed, but oh no, there's old Deuteronomy behind him. And then suddenly this cunt is flying around, throwing flowers about that he's just pulling out of God knows where, and just doing full-on sorcery. Like, this is not a magic trick this cat is doing. This cat is summoning material from the ether and appearing it in front of all the other cats. This cat is a goddamn sorcerer.
And nobody mentions it again.
No, everyone's like, that's fine. So that leads me to believe that McCavity was the group sorcerer previously, and they've just not replaced him. Like, he went mad with power, and so they've had to maybe find another sorcerer from among the kittens, the litter of kittens each year. Maybe they need to look for the 7th kitten of the 7th kitten, and that'll become a sorcerer, I suppose. Not sure what I'm talking about. Let's move swiftly on.
No, but it weirdly makes sense.
Let's move on. So anyway, long. I think that's all the cats. I think we've covered all the cats.
Well, we have to give Mr. Mistopheles a rating. I'm like a 6. I think he's alright.
Yeah, do you know what? The guy who plays him, who I think at the time was dating Taylor Swift, I think I'm right in saying. I don't know if that's how he got the role, but,
yeah.
But apparently T-Swizzle is running the cats game.
I mean, the only thing I really have to say about him is he has this like romance subplot with Victoria, which is a bit weird. Well, say it's a bit weird is a bit of an understatement, really. But one of the things that made me truly uncomfortable in this movie is whenever the cats are shown to like want to give affection to one another, because obviously cats don't show affection like how humans do. They do this kind of like this sort of like head rubs and stuff, and I was just like, look, it would be less creepy if they just made out.
Yeah, right. It's really weird. Like, they rub up against each other and shit.
Yeah, and I'm like, just fucking French one another. It would actually be less creepy.
And even Dench is getting in on this shit. Like, she's rubbing up against anyone will have her.
Dench is like, she is leaving snail trails in this movie, mate. Like, it is it is not okay what is happening with her character. Like, she is just spreading it all over.
Beautiful. Did we give Mistopheles a rating?
Yeah, I said like a 6.
Okay, I'm gonna probably give him like a 4. Like,
yeah.
I'm not into Mistopheles in this movie. Although as a kid he was my favourite cat, so make of that what you will.
Because you love sorcerer cats, clearly.
Yeah, I guess so. Anyway,
you're easily pleased.
So the end of this movie, clearly I am. I've seen every rendition of Cats.
No, that's psychotic behaviour. That's what that is.
I mean, I should say, for the benefit of the listener... No, do you know what? Fuck it. Yes, I've seen every rendition of Cats. I don't need to explain myself any more than that. I refuse to, in fact.
Own it. Rebuild yourself, bitch.
Rebuild yourself, bitch. Anyway, look, let's cut a long story short. Grisabella is made the Jellicle choice, is chosen to ascend to the Heaviside layer. But this is an interesting difference between... I should say the Heaviside layer is kind of like not much of a thing in the poems. Like, it's referenced, but it's not really gone into. For some reason, Andrew Lloyd Webber extracted that and made it cat heaven, which...
Yeah, that's the vibe that I got, is that, like, one of the cats, they go up to the Heaviside layer and they're reborn, so it's like another of a cat's 9 lives.
Yeah, sure. I think that's the idea.
Yeah.
So, here's the thing. In the stage play, when Grisabella ascends to the Heaviside Lair, what happens is a massive, literal stairway to heaven descends from the ceiling, and there's mist, and it's all lit up nice and everything, and she just ascends up the stairs, and then the stairway retracts. So it's explicitly mystical. In this movie, she is put on a hot air balloon
that Mephistopheles makes.
Which Mephistopheles makes. Because of course
he just summons it.
Not only is he a sorcerer, he's an aeronaut. And
man's got to have hobbies.
Well, clearly.
Cat's got to have hobbies, sorry.
Yes. So she ascends.
I saw your brain trying to compute what was going on there, and it was a struggle.
So they make this hot air balloon, and Grisabella just rises and rises and rises toward the morning sun, and is never heard from again. This bitch just died, right? Like, she just got up to the fucking atmosphere and just, like, got beyond Earth's atmosphere and just died. Like, there's no reincarnation.
There's just this cat in a fur coat just floating through the infinite expanse of space.
Dead. Because that's the other thing as well. McCavity turns up for one last crack at this, because apparently the hot air balloon is taking Grisabella to the Heaviside Lair. And anyway, grabs the rope hanging off the hot air balloon, and then plummets to his doom. Oh no, we do actually see he's alive. Actually, we do see he's alive at the end.
Yeah, he lands on top of a building.
Yeah. So unlike Grisabella, McCavity makes it out alive.
Well, for how long? Because it's shown that he's stuck on top of that building and he tries to apparate away, but he can't. I'm assuming because Mephistopheles has now risen to
because
power
Mephistopheles has taken his place as the group sorcerer. Yes.
Yeah, so we've figured that bit out.
I mean, I'm not sure that's what Tom Hooper intended, but
it's there. It's there.
You know what? Death of the author, all right? Interpretation is everything.
Yeah. And so, basically, not only is Jennifer Hudson her corpse is just floating through space.
Mark, we've talked about this almost as long as we talked about the Ghostbusters franchise. The entire franchise.
I know. But just to finally put a little cap on this, because, you know, we've already mentioned that Judi Dench just stares at the audience. It's horrifying.
It's horrifying. It's bizarre. It goes on for way too long.
But the ending is implying that McCavity is stuck atop that building with no way to get down. So he just kind of starves to death up there.
Yeah. Because that's the thing as well. Taylor Swift has left this film at this point, so she's not...
Oh yeah, she was long gone, mate. She had her cat ears off and she fucked right off.
Yeah, she had an Uber waiting outside the entire time.
Yeah, she showed up, dosed everybody and left.
Yeah, so what do we think? Predictions for Cats 2?
The Revenge of McCavity, I'm here for it.
McCavity never dies. That's a reference to Phantom of the Opera 2 for the benefit of listeners.
It is, yes.
A little Andrew Lloyd Webber in joke. Fuck me, we've talked about this film forever. We have to give our final verdict.
We
Kino
are, yes.
Inferno.
So, Aiden, Kino or Inferno, Cats?
Well, I was dreading this moment, Mike, because I knew I'd have to come down on one side of the fence, Kino or Inferno. I know that in the past we've done silly little things where we say, oh, we're dipping it in the Inferno, but then we're putting it on the shelf, and things like that, right? I think we need to be decisive when it comes to Cats.
I already know what I'm going to say.
Okay. It's
Do you want to go first?
It's my time, though, so, you know. Maybe,
Okay,
maybe let me
fair
have
enough.
the-
I thought you were going on some kind of Cats loving spiel that was going to go on for a bit. But...
For another half hour.
Yeah, that's what I was like, I want to get my rating in before you go on the time.
All right, fine. Get your rating in.
I wasn't being serious, but fuck it, I'll take any opportunity.
Okay.
I'm going to have to put it in Kino, and let me give you my reasons why. Because
Unbelievable. Go on.
Because I can't consign it to the flames, because that would be implying that I'm saying this movie needs to fuck off and be better. No, this movie needs to be seen and experienced.
Yes.
Because it's a fucking nightmare.
Yes.
But it's never boring.
No.
And I actually I will say right now, whenever I see people saying Cats is one of the worst movies ever made, fuck off, is it? It's no way even close to being some of the worst movies ever made.
Yeah.
It's got a lot of bad decisions, and it's ugly to look at in places, but
it's
so
hideous.
unique. Yeah, it shouldn't be allowed, mate. Like,
it's a Boschian hellscape.
But I would literally tell anybody.
By the way,
to watch this
Boshy
movie.
and Hellscape. If you're still listening to get ideas for a band name, Boshy and Hellscape.
Tribal Witch, baby. Tribal Witch.
What was the other one? Oh, Feline Death Cult.
Feline Death Cult. No, I can't put it in the fire because I want people to experience this fucking nightmare of a movie and experience it in the same way that we have and take as much joy out of it as we clearly do.
I think I know what my answer to this is going to be.
Go for it.
But strap in for a half an hour explanation of it.
Don't worry, I'm holding my bladder. Go on.
We all are.
Getting old, mate.
Listen, this movie, Tom Hooper's 2019 adaptation of Andrew Lloyd Webber's 1981 adaptation of C.S. Eliot's 1939 collection of poetry. I can't, in all good conscience, say that this is a good film, because it isn't on any level.
No, it's not.
It's one of those films, though, like The Room, or Troll 2, or something like that, where every decision made in this movie is baffling. And on that basis, I think I derive a lot of joy from it. And the people I've shown it to derive a lot of joy from it. I don't know anyone who has watched this movie in a group setting and come away from it like, that was tedious. People have come away from it saying that was terrible and I wanted to claw my own eyes out. But people always have a cheeky smile on their face when they talk about Cats. I think there's something about it that, like, it brings people together. It unites people in its insanity, in its poor aesthetic decisions, in its incredible lack of musicality, in its baffling casting decisions. It's every possible, like, we've not even really talked about this, but the editing and the camera work is also
terrible. Flat wide shots and lots of weird cuts.
Oh, and one thing that we didn't bring up that we need to mention, the scale of these cats is inconsistent.
Yeah, that's a whole thing.
We don't have time to get into this.
No, and I think there are many YouTubers out there that have covered that because that's something that you really need the visuals for.
Yeah, but I just want to point out, like, even that they couldn't get right. Like, when the cats are up against human items, we can never quite tell how big they're supposed to be. Because at one point, like, a knife and fork is the same size as Victoria. It's very strange. It's very strange. But anyway, that said, this movie has to go in the Inferno because it's terrible. It is one of the worst movies ever made. I wouldn't say the worst movie ever made. However, if I'm on the precipice of the Inferno and I'm throwing this movie in, it's going to be like the end of Return of the King, and I'm Gollum. And I see this movie plummeting towards the fires of Mount Doom, and I simply have to leap in afterwards because I can't bear to live without it. And I think it's because I'm a connoisseur of bafflingly shit films. You know this. I love a film when I put it on, I'm like, not only is this shit, I don't understand why this was made, and I need to. And I think that's what Cats speak to for me. And so on that basis alone, it's going out of the Inferno and it's coming into Kino. Because never... I jump into the fire, shield it with my own body, and throw it back onto the precipice of Mount Doom. Because I think you have to see it, you're right. It's one of those things where you're missing out on a cultural experience if you haven't watched this movie. I genuinely think that. Like, when this came out at the end of 2019, it became a laughingstock, and then it became a cult classic, basically overnight. And this is one of those few movies that deserves that midnight movie, so bad it's good reputation. Because, like I say, I've seen this a few times now, and every time I'm baffled anew. I notice new things about, like, every time I'm like, it's not going to be as hellish as it was the first time, because I was lightly refreshed, wink, and I'd never seen it before. But every time I put it on, and admittedly, I've never seen this film sober, but every time I put it on...
I think it's impossible to watch it sober.
Every time I put it on, there's new stuff. There's new weird elements that I didn't notice before. And I'm going to keep watching this movie intermittently throughout the rest of my life, because, like The Room before it, and I was an early adopter of The Room, by the way, I just cannot wrap my head around it. And the thing that puts it above The Room is its massive budget. This is like if you gave Tommy Wiseau billions of dollars and all the CGI and all the stars that he could handle.
Because the budget for this movie is estimated between 80 to 100 million.
Yeah, and that's because they obviously they
did reshoots. Yeah, they did reshoots and stuff.
And they lost money as well. They lost so much money.
Yeah, and this film still made 70 odd million, something like that.
Yeah, but it was considered a flop. That's how expensive this movie was.
Yeah, exactly. But it was everywhere when it came out. And also, didn't want to draw too much attention to it, but this movie came out at the tail end of 2019, and everything went to shit straight afterwards.
Oh, yeah, Tom Hooper summoned COVID with this movie. And that's not libel, because it's true.
Literally. If this movie wasn't released, no lockdowns.
So...
That's not true.
I think... No, it is. So I think, basically, what we're saying is Kino in the sense that there is no... we're never going to see a movie of this budget with this star power behind it. Frankly, with this high... I'm not a big Tom Hooper fan, but he was at the height of his career when he made this movie. We're not going to see a movie like this ever again, I don't think. Or not in our lifetimes, anyway.
No, I'm inclined to agree. This is a once-in-a-lifetime disaster piece. And
I was excited before this movie came out, because I was smelling it on the breeze. I was because as you know, I'm a Cats expert. I know what's in store. It was do you know what it was like? It was in a fucking Lovecraft story, when there's the one cunt who's read the Necronomicon, who's seen the weird shit, and all the other people come to him and they're like, oh, it's probably not as bad as he's making it out, and he's there no, listen, seriously, your sanity will break.
And then those people get pulled inside out.
Yes, that's what it was like for months. Was just me going, look, you need to get ready. You need to prepare spiritually, physically, and emotionally for this experience, because I know what's coming, or at least I know the version of what's coming, and if they've translated it in any way like I think they have, and trust me, Tom threw me for a loop with a few of his choices. We talked about the cockroaches.
A few.
But pretty much all of them. Because bear in mind, I was gearing up for this is going to be mind-blowing. But when I saw it, it knocked me for 6. I have not laughed that hard for that extended period of time before or since. And I don't want to say that Cats brought me a joy that I'll never know again, but I think it brought me...
I think that is exactly what you're saying.
In a sense, yes, because I was so glad that Tom Hooper delivered such a mess, because I'd been hyping this up for months and months and months. I was saying, no, seriously, this is going to be insane. You're going to love it. It's going to be such trash. It's going to be unbelievable. It's going to be unbearable. It's going to be nothing you've ever seen. I was fucking pulling, whenever friends would go, oh, why do you want to see it? I'd be pulling out, this is the budget. This is who's in it. This is what's going to happen. This is going to be another level of insanity. And I was proven so right. So this movie vindicated me in my weird obsession with seeing it. And not only that, you know what I mean? It blew my tiny mind. It exceeded my expectations for a trash-to-piece. Because that's what this is. It's a trash-to-piece.
I don't know how to follow that, because it's just, this movie clearly just means so much to you.
I hate that we're recording this. But
this
you
is
know
on
what?
record now, baby.
I'm letting my freak flag fly. And I also know, whatever our audience thinks of this, I know there are plenty of people, I've listened to podcasts, there are plenty of people who agree with me that this is a new kind of camp classic. It's a new...
absolutely.
Yeah.
Again, I'm pitching my tent in that place.
I think that's how they've made some of their money back, by just retroactively being okay, midnight movie it is then. They seem to have kind of embraced it. 'Cause there's a lot of screenings in the US of they're developing Rocky Horror style rules and stuff, and people turning up in costume, and I think whatever I think of the stage play and whatever else, right? To be clear, the stage play is god awful.
Yeah, it's not Cats is not a very well regarded show.
It's popular, but yeah, again, by people who are aficionados of musical theatre, it's not well regarded in that regard. I would recommend this movie though, because it is just something else. I think that's all that could be said about it, really.
when people say, oh, there's nothing else quite like it, it's very literal in this case. There is nothing else like this film.
Yeah, and we've said that about a lot of films, right? But this
is the top of that pile.
Yeah, to be clear, if you watched Hausu after this, you'd be like, Hausu, normal movie.
Yeah.
Very normal movie.
Hausu is nowhere near as fucking weird.
If you watched Mystics in Bali after this, you'd be like, normal film.
You could double bill both those movies and still not find anything nearly as strange as what you'll see in this film.
Yeah. So, yeah, fuck me. We've double Kino'd Cats then.
Cats is certified Kino, baby.
And there goes our credibility as film critics. This will be the last episode of Kino Inferno. The fan base is running, screaming, apart from the true Chads who know.
And you true Chads, we see you.
We see you, you Chads. Anyway, should we talk about a shit film?
Yeah.
All right.
Lot 666, a chandelier in pieces. Some of you may recall the strange affair of the Phantom of the Opera. Gentlemen.
Based upon one of the most successful theatre pieces of all time, this 2004 adaptation of Lloyd Webber's Phantom of the Opera was helmed by Joel I Put Nips on the Batsuit Schumacher and is a mostly faithful adaptation of the source material. Telling the story of the ill-fated love triangle between Christine Day, Raoul someone or other, and the disfigured wannabe swashbuckler the Phantom, I don't really need to say anymore. It's the Phantom of the Opera. We all know this story.
Yes.
We all indeed do know the story of Phantom of the Opera.
Well, I have to say, Mark, this is one that I've never read the book. I've never seen the play. I've maybe seen the Lon Chaney version.
I've never read the book. I've never seen the stage play either. So, unlike you, I'm not really in a position of authority to sort of deep dive.
No. My main familiarity with Phantom is from Brian De Palma's Phantom of Paradise.
Yes, this is the thing. Like, Phantom of the Opera to me is something where I'm more into a lot of the things that the story has inspired or things that have directly lifted from the story.
Or parodied,
Or parody, yeah, exactly. Like, I feel like Phantom of the Opera is so ingrained in pop culture that a lot of people don't really pay the original or the Lloyd Webber musical that much attention anymore.
Oh, well, you say that, but the Lloyd Webber musical has a fandom.
It does. A
fandom of ravenous teenage girls.
Yeah, and honestly, I don't fully understand why.
Well, I do.
I mean, gothic romance, handsome masked stranger. Like, yeah, I get all that, but, like, ultimately...
It's the ultimate thing of, like, what if all the dumb boys left me alone and I found myself with a dark, brooding, sexy older man? Like,
who just so happens to be an ex-circus performer who lives in the bowels of a theatre and seemingly survives off of eating rats.
Yeah, but I think what you're forgetting is that teenage girls are incredibly horny.
Very true. There's a reason as
are teenage boys.
Everybody's horny. We learnt this from Cats.
Yes. Well, Cats are too horny, if anything.
Too horny. And given the, frankly, disgusting amount of airtime that we just gave to Tom Hooper's seminal classic Cats...
I could have done more.
You probably could have. I don't think either of us have really got it.
Listeners, I wanted to do
Phantom.
I wanted to do an hour on T.S. Eliot, an hour on Tom Hooper's career, an hour on the stage play, and an hour on the film. But Mark would not let me, so we have this compromised version, but I hope it's all right.
And rightly so, because I'm saying you right now, if you want to do that, we're starting up a little spin-off, and it's going to be Podcats, and it's going to be you giving us an entire history lesson on cats. So let us know over on Twitter and Facebook and all those other social media places. If
don't threaten me with a good time.
If you want Podcats, let us know, because I'll fucking do it. I'll sit here and have Aiden scream at me about Rum Tum Tugger. I will do it. For you, for the listeners, for you. Anyway, Phantom of the Opera. It's a bit shit. I'm just going to throw that out there.
So the Joel Schumacher film.
The Joel Schumacher version.
Yeah, it's deeply shit.
It's deeply shit. And again, after deep diving Cats so much, after raw dogging the shit out of that movie, mostly on your end, I kind of just like
raw cat.
I used the mouth and sort of jacked off for most of it, but you were the one raw dogging.
Good God.
Anyway,
that's why they call him the cum bugger.
I mean, if I was a horny cat, I'd be called the cum bugger. It is very well known. But yeah, after expelling so much snot and excrement and bile over Cats, I think it's.
When did the excrement come in?
You were too busy talking about T.S. Eliot or something. You weren't paying it. You weren't paying enough attention.
Literature, Mark.
Shitterature. Anyway, no, the T.S. Eliot stuff's probably really good. I don't know. I'm very burnt out on Cats and Lloyd Webber right now.
Right, come on, let's talk about Phantom of the Opera. Come on.
We should.
You chose this film, Mark.
I chose this film, and viewers, listeners, whatever, I'm just telling you right now, do not expect a 2-hour deep dive on Phantom. It is not happening.
Fuck that.
No. So I chose this movie because when it came to pairing something with Cats, and I came up with the idea of doing the whole like Lloyd Webber thing, it occurred to me that I'd never seen the Phantom of the Opera movie, and I'd mostly heard bad things about it.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, what better to pair with Cats than another supposedly terrible Lloyd Webber movie? But where Cats is entertaining and weird and stands on its own for just being a monstrosity, Phantom of the Opera is just simply boring.
Yeah.
Very, very boring. To the point where I had to rewatch the last half an hour because I just zoned the fuck out on this movie.
Yeah. I would say comparing these two movies, it's like comparing a gunshot to the atomic bomb. It's like, one is bad and it killed you, but one reshaped humanity.
And honestly, even though people out there that hate Cats, they can't deny that.
No.
I mean, Cats caused COVID, so...
Cats did cause COVID, you heard it.
Like, it reshaped the fuck out of humanity. It killed a lot of people.
One thing that we should dig into in this movie, or one thing that I want to bring up anyway, is Andrew Lloyd Webber's reaction to these two movies is very different. In the case of Phantom of the Opera, he was actually involved in the screenplay. He has a screenplay credit along with Joel Schumacher. I couldn't find quite how that divvied up in terms of writing, because presumably it's based on the book from the... And by book, I mean the script. The script, listeners. Because I know these theatre terms. Apparently...
Wine-drinking bastards.
I am a wine-drinking homosexual, it's true.
Same.
No, but anyway, yeah. Presumably it's based on the script from the stage play, which was not written by Lloyd Webber, was it? Or was it? Am I about to show my ass?
If you haven't shown enough ass this evening in favour of Cats, then what else can you do?
Yes, well, vamp for a second whilst I get the...
Well, I will take an opportunity to vamp. So whilst you're doing your research on Lloyd Webber, the one thing that I really want to point out
on the pod, as usual.
I will shout out one thing that's always been sort of strange to me, is that I know that Emmy Rossum got a lot of praise and a lot of criticism for this movie.
Right.
And I'm a big fan of Emmy Rossum.
Emmy Rossum plays Christine.
She does, yes. She plays Christine. She plays the lead role in the movie. And I know she's kind of had a very mixed reception in this movie. And I'm a big fan of Emmy Rossum. I'm a huge fan of The American Shameless, which I think she is tremendous in. And it's a fucking crime she's never won any major awards for that show. I just wanted to get that out there.
Mark did say off air, though, that Rossum gets her tits, bum and fanny out quite a bit in Shameless. So make of that what you will.
She does, but she's also a powerhouse actress as well. Like, she really delivers. Anyway, it's weird seeing her in this movie where she's doing a lot of her own singing and such. But yes. Joel Schumacher, who is a director who has made some really good movies and a guy who's made some really, really bad movies. Yeah. His entire direction of her in this movie is just, right, sing your song and walk over here.
Yeah, the direction of this movie is very flat. What I will say, sorry, to be clear, the script for the original musical was written by a guy called Richard Stilgoe, who also wrote the lyrics to Lloyd Webber's music.
Okay.
Put that in the pipe and smoke it. Whereas the screenplay here is credited to Joel Schumacher and Andrew Lloyd Webber.
Right, okay. And this movie is very much, for what, to my knowledge of like the story of Phantom of the Opera, is pretty to the book, really. I believe there is some stuff that's changed, but I don't really know enough about it to comment.
Some odds and sods of the plot have changed, like the Phantom's backstory, I think I was reading. Again, neither of us are experts on the book, so we'll leave it there. But, so let's just briefly go over this flick then. So we start in flash forward, a framing device, where Patrick Wilson in old age makeup
Really
is,
bad old age makeup.
really
I point out. Like
unconvincing.
really, I mean, old age makeup is hard to get right. We get that, but this is bad.
So
But this is
he's Raoul.
yeah, he's Raoul. So this is set in 1919, and it's a public auction of the sort of the ruins of the opera house where the majority of the movie takes place, where they're selling off items, and unconvincing old man Patrick Wilson is shopping for items, and it's Miranda Richardson's character, isn't it?
Yeah,
is there
Madam Bitchington or whatever she's
Geary,
called. Geary, yeah, okay, sure.
who is also in very unconvincing old age makeup as well.
Yeah.
And they sort of clock one another, and they're trying to outbid each other on this paper mache box with a monkey with symbols on it.
Yes.
Which is a strange thing to want to spend your money on, but we don't judge.
And it doesn't make any more sense when you learn the context of the item either, but that's
a whole other thing.
Anyway, this whole scene really is there to set up the chandelier.
Yeah, so the scene's in black and white. It's trying to be very moody, and it just fails because it's so brightly lit.
Yeah.
And then the chandelier, the broken chandelier that's in the middle of the auction, just rises up, which I believe is exactly how the stage show starts.
Yes,
as well.
and you have the bombastic bam, bum, 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 bam. And actually, when this happened, I was kind of like, okay, we're in for this kind of movie. But then,
it's gonna be very bombastic.
Yeah, but then
it's just.
And I actually thought this transition was quite effective. Like when it goes from the black and white, and then the chandelier like rises up to color, and it's like back in its position where it originally would be, and you get the bam, 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 bam. I was like, okay, this is actually going to be kind of cool and interesting. But unfortunately, there's just none of that flair throughout the rest of the movie. I mean, when you hear Joel Schumacher Phantom, you kind of think, okay, I can see why you'd go for a Schumacher Phantom, because based on his Batman movies anyway. There's a certain sense of camp and melodrama that he can whip up. But,
say what you will about something like, Batman and Robin, for example. Like, it is just balls to the wall, campy bollocks, and it's very energetic and over the top. And that's kind of what the story of Phantom of the Opera needs. And aside from that bit at the beginning, there's none of that. Like, it's a very visually interesting movie in places. Like, there's a lot of emphasis on like costume design and set design.
Do you think so? I really didn't care for much of the... Well, maybe the set design, I'm being unfair, but like the directing and the editing I thought was pretty moribund for the whole thing.
Oh, no, yes. I think I definitely didn't word myself correctly there. I think what I was supposed to say is, like, the set design, the costumes and stuff, there's a lot of emphasis on that. But in terms of actually, like, crafting a style or an atmosphere, especially atmosphere, because I feel like that is what this film is lacking in so much.
Yeah, one of my first notes is just, there's no oomph to this movie, there's no suspense, it's not sexy, it's not scary, there's just nothing going on. And I think this movie should be sexy, because it's about
it's a love story.
Also, it's a movie that purely exists to get bookish 17-year-old girls to swoon. And, first of all, maybe don't get a middle-aged homosexual to direct it. Maybe, get someone who knows what teenage girls want and put that on screen. But that aside, do you know what I mean, though? It's like, I can't imagine the target audience for this movie, 17-year-old goth girls, sitting down, watching this and enjoying it. Like, I just can't. Like, and this is kind of what I always try and do. Like, I don't want to just shit on a movie, but I always try and be like, will it work for its target audience, or is there something going on here that would work? But I just don't. I can't see who would enjoy this movie at all. Really, like, there's no. Yeah, I mean, I'm very well aware that I've just spoke for over 2 hours about why I love cats, but Cats
has energy, it has charm, it has something. This movie really doesn't. Like, even though I'd heard this movie was bad, I wasn't expecting it to be as boring and as dull.
Like,
and as lifeless
I watched
as
this last night. I think we both watched this last night, didn't we?
Yeah, I watched it last night. Yeah,
and I just can't remember a goddamn thing about it. Like, it's
even the sequence where Gerard Butler, who
plays the Phantom.
The Phantom. Gerard Butler plays the Phantom, and in a weird casting choice, because Gerard Butler is not a singer, by his own admission as well, is not a singer.
I will say sorry, finish your point.
I mean, like, he's not terrible.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, but you need somebody with vocal chops to play that part.
It's a classic case of they could have dubbed him over really easily, because like half his face is concealed. Like, I don't know why they made him sing. But because I'm not just pulling that out of the blue. Like, Minnie Driver's in this movie. She plays Carlotta, who is the soprano that Christine replaces, and her opera singing is dubbed over by an opera singer. So it's kind of like, why don't you just do that for Gerard, because he can't sing? Like, you know, let's know, like, I think there's elements of Gerard Butler's performance that are not bad. Like, for example, I think the scene, and we're all over the map here, but whatever. I mean, you know, people know the drill, right? Phantom of the Opera, the Phantom's in love with Christine. He engineers scenarios in the opera house for her to become the rising star of the opera house, and when they try and go against his wills, he causes accidents and kills people. Yes,
and Christine is actually in love with Raoul, and
well,
the Phantom's obviously,
is she?
Well, you know, those two were childhood sweethearts, and they kind of rekindle that. And the Phantom is not happy about that because he wants to be the only one getting off.
And we know, and you know, the Phantom is a disfigured genius who's been shunned by society.
And it all culminates in him forcing the opera house to perform his opera, which is Don Juan Triumphant.
Yes.
Called? Yes. And then it all culminates in fire and misery. That's the Phantom of the Opera. Most people know this.
Does Christine die at the end of this?
She is dead at the end of this movie.
Right, but we don't see her die, right? 'Cause this is something where I was like, if I had a stroke, because at the start of the movie, Patrick Wilson is like, he's at this auction house buying stuff that Christine mentioned about her time with the Phantom, I guess. Like, that's why he wants the monkey with the symbols.
Yeah.
Because it was in the Phantom's lair. But yeah, we don't see Christine die, do we?
No, we don't see her die. At the end of the movie, she, after telling the Phantom that it's not his appearance that she finds disturbing, repulsive, yeah. It's his actions that she finds repulsive.
Yes.
And then her and Raoul, they leave.
Which is kind of a limp dick of an ending for this movie, really.
Yeah, for a movie that's supposed to be so full of life and bombast, it's just like, sorry, love. You're a bit of a prick. I'm just going to go off with this bloke instead. And then they just sort of paddle away. And then the mob bursts in, and Jennifer Ellison, ex-pop star and star of Brookside, is in this movie for some reason.
She's
no idea why she's in this movie.
Not very good in it either, but
no. But she's in this movie, and she like picks up the Phantom's mask, and the movie ends.
Yeah, he's scarpered, right?
Yeah. And then at the end of the movie, when Patrick Wilson, Raoul, places the monkey symbol box, because of why not, places it down upon Christine's grave, he finds a rose with a ring on it, which is obviously from the Phantom, because the Phantom's still alive and is still in love with Christine.
Yeah, okay, cool.
That happens.
So anyway, that's the basic thrust of the plot. What I was kind of going to say about Gerard Butler, he cannot sing, and he is like really going for it, but we're at Russell Crowe levels of like there's only so much he can do. I will say, if they dubbed him over with the singing, I think his performance would actually be okay. Like,
physicality-wise, he's pretty good.
Yeah, and like there's the scene where he kind of one of the scenes that I was like, oh, this movie's threatening to come to life. How interesting. Is when he kind of like when he's in like the red suit and he has the full mask over his face.
Mask of Red Death.
And he kind of comes in and he's like demanding that they do Don Juan Triumphant, and he kind of he has a few snarky lines where he's saying about like, oh, the like main actor needs to lose some weight, and like he's slacking off Minnie Driver's acting and stuff. Yeah. Like that whole scene's great, and like I think he's actually really good in that scene. And I think some of his like speaking vocal performance is really nice as well. Like when he's kind of in the shadows and he says about like, I demand that you keep the opera box open and all that kind of stuff. Like I think he can be quite imposing, and he is a bit of a ham. So
yeah,
I can see why they. And also, he was fairly young in this, and like kind of I can understand. He's a good looking guy, especially at this point in his career. So I can kind of understand why they'd go for him in that regard. But the singing is no.
Yes, that's right. I mean, like, Emmy Rossum is a fairly good singer, but we discussed this previously, but, like, she's not the right kind of vocalist.
No, I compared her to, like, she's the best singer in an Andram troupe. Like, it's not bad, but it's, like, she does well with what she's got, I think. But I also just think her and Butler have no chemistry in this movie whatsoever. Zero chemistry. Like, I don't buy for 1 second that she might be a bit horny for him. No. And also, like, this movie is, again, it's filmed by a middle-aged homosexual, so you'd think he'd know how to make a sexy man, a flamboyant man, sexy, but it's almost like he had. And this is kind of something actually you run into this with his take on Poison Ivy and Batman and Robin. He has no idea how to film women's sexuality. I don't think. Like, and I mean, I am well aware that Joel Schumacher is no expert on the subject, but
well, obviously.
but at the same time, it's like she never seems to be framed in a way where she's like, oh, he's a bit of alright. There's no intimacy between them in the frame. There's no... Because that's the thing, the whole point of the Phantom, like his song, The Phantom of the Opera is Here in Your Mind and all that shit, like, he's supposed to be, like, mesmeric to her, like, hypnotic, and that's what, and, like, he draws her to him.
You don't get that. Like, all he does in this movie is he leads her on a little boat ride where lit candles come out of the water.
Yeah, very weird.
It's an interesting visual cue.
I gather that happens in the stage play as a scene transition.
Yes, I believe so.
So, like,
it's
literally,
just...
like, the set rises from the ground.
Yeah.
But in a movie, very strange.
Yeah, I'm like, okay, so the Phantom, is he a sorcerer? Are all of Lloyd Webber's musicals about sorcerers?
Yeah.
But, like, in the stage version, when he's taking on that boat ride, it's like, there's just fog everywhere, and it's really moody and atmospheric, and, you know, he's singing to her and she's mesmerised by everything. This movie doesn't have that. He just takes her on a little boat ride and puts her on a horse. Yeah,
I don't know what the horse is about.
Yeah, I don't either. And it's also such a shame because...
Never heard from again as well, that horse.
Yeah, never heard from again. But, like, it's also such a shame as well because, I mean, I don't think a lot of the music in Phantom of the Opera, like, the songs in particular, are particularly great.
No, they're shit.
Yeah, the title song, however, is great. Like, that's a really great musical song.
It's the song in the movie.
Yeah, it's the song. And this movie just squanders it.
Yeah, agreed.
It doesn't do anything with it.
I mean, it doesn't help that Butler is not nailing it.
No, I mean, and especially when, you know, the original is Michael Crawford and Sarah Brightman, who are just, like, the definitive versions.
Have we mentioned
that
Lloyd Webber wrote this as a chirps to Sarah Brightman?
He did. And when you consider what the plot's about and...
Well, yeah, a hideous little man who makes beautiful music and lusts after a woman.
And writes an opera for her to be the lead star in, so he can get away. Yeah.
He was chirpsing. He was on the chirps.
Lloyd Webber chirps in Sarah Brightman. Shame, married her.
Yeah, for a time.
Now
that's another wild thing, right? Okay, I want to talk about casting before we wrap this puppy up, right? Point the first. In fact, I'm going to swap the points around in my head because this one's more frivolous. Point the first. We have Minnie Driver in this movie, and she's one of the few actors who seems to know that she's in Phantom of the Opera. She's playing Carlotta, the soprano, I think they say, but like the diva of the opera house, right? And she is camping it up and having a great time, and I actually quite enjoyed her performance. However, here's my point on casting. Nothing against Minnie, love her, but Sarah Brightman should have been that role.
Why wouldn't you get Sarah Brightman in?
Yeah, crazy. Why wouldn't you get her to do that role? Mad. Just as a little meta nod.
Yeah, exactly. That'd be a fun little nod to the audience.
That would get the fans in as well, because the fans of this musical have very purist takes on it. Right, that's what I've learned from a little bit of digging. Like, they hate deviation from the Brightman Crawford model. Right. What I'll say, which is what I want to bring up next. Do you know who was originally pitched as the Phantom in this movie? But the fandom...
Hugh Jackman.
No. Hugh Jackman was one of them. I'm talking even before Hugh got involved.
No, so Hugh is the only one that I know. I know that they offered it to Hugh, and he was really bummed out he couldn't do it.
Yeah, I mean, that kind of makes sense. He's a musical guy. It's fine.
And he would have been good as well, I think.
And he was at the peak of his powers at that time as well.
Yeah.
No, what I was reading about, and this is someone that the fandom rejected, Antonio motherfucking Banderas.
But he's, like, so perfect for it.
Like, what are we doing? The man...
Why wouldn't you? Like, you want to make this movie sexy?
Yeah.
You put Banderas in it. Like, Emmy Rossum would be fucking frothing the entire way through.
Patrick Wilson would be frothing. Antonio Banderas...
Everyone would be frothing.
...has a power of... I mean, you've seen The Mask of Zorro.
I have, and it's a powerfully sexy film.
One of the most erotic films ever made.
It's up there with The Mummy and The Mummy Returns. The most bisexual films that ever died.
I mean, frankly, if we could have got Zeta-Jones and Banderas in this movie... better movie. Am I mean, right?
It would just be another Mask of Zorro movie, wouldn't it?
I know, but it would be sexy as.
Very sexy. Very, very sexy.
I mean, just a brief tangent about The Mask of Zorro, though. That's a film so sexy that even Anthony Hopkins is sexy in it.
And we don't often get a chub on for the Hops.
But that scene where he's whipping out them candles, ladies. And fellas.
You know we're going to give it to the Hops.
Oh, daddy. Anyway.
I feel like the discussion on cats has driven us mad because we're just horny for everybody.
It's just we mentioned Zorro and I was like, oh god. I actually think it might be sexier than The Mummy, but that's another story for another day.
The Mummy's not intentionally sexy though. That's the thing.
True.
The Mummy is accidentally sexy.
Whereas The Mask of Zorro has Catherine Zeta-Jones being like, Zorro, make love to me.
Yeah, that movie is all about people going to bang, whereas like The Mummy is just, everyone in this movie just happens to be really fit.
Yeah, whereas Mask of Zorro, you're right. It has a wide on. Anyway.
I mean, we're just talking about movies that the Phantom of the Opera wishes it was.
Yeah, it wishes. Yeah, this is the thing as well. What were the producers thinking? I mean, if you could have got Banderas in, again, it's Banderas at the height of his powers.
And Banderas can sing.
The fucking
as well.
the Phantom fandom's response was exactly that. Oh, he's not a musical singer. He's not a singer. It's like, have you seen Desperado? Like, have you seen this man singing? It reduces women to puddles. Like, do you know what I'm saying?
Like, no, I totally get it. And so they got Gerard Butler in, who not particularly sexy in this movie either, apart from in like the sort of the tight red outfit, I guess.
He's a good looking guy, but he's not the Phantom. He's not the dark, compelling, sexy. Ooh, is he a bit dangerous? Is he a bit ooh? He's not that, you know.
No. Also, I really don't like the design when you see him unmasked.
Yeah.
It just looks really weak
I have
sauce.
that in my the disfigurement is terrible in this.
Yeah, it's not even that bad, really.
Yeah, I mean, again, they could have made something of that, where Christine's whole thing is like, look, you're not even that disfigured, mate. Like, you've made your own bed and you're lying in it, kind of thing.
And the other thing is, like, Christine talks about how the angel of music, as she refers to Phantom, has been teaching her to sing for a long, long time. And it's like, right, so this Phantom dude's just been grooming her for many, many years. Yeah,
this is an element of the plot that I really don't understand. So she thinks he's the angel of music, because he never appears to her, right? She hears his voice.
Yeah, and she believes that he's come about due to her dad, who, when he died, said he would send the angel of music to her. See, the plot of this movie is bollocks, mate.
Yeah, but also, she works at an opera house, which is known to be haunted by a phantom. And at no point is she like, hang on, same guy. Because that's the thing. At the start of this movie, we see the two guys who are taking over the opera house. And can I just briefly put a pin on what I was saying to say? So that's Simon Callow and Kieran Hines. And they are playing the two guys who take over the opera house. They've been in business together for many years. They've made a bit of money. They're buying an opera house. Two elderly men, not elderly, but middle-aged men. We never see any wives. They're buying an opera house.
Your friend has the gay condition.
By day, theatre, by night, knocking shop.
I'm just saying, if I went into business with my mate and we made a little bit of money, neither of us would be like, oh, love, should we buy a theatre? You know what I'm saying?
I mean, we would.
I mean, you and me would, but so can
absolutely.
So we can have a sword fight on top.
Absolutely. That's what I feel about this movie. It makes sword fights boring.
Yeah, I mean, this movie, I've not really got much to say about it. It was really boring.
No, I don't either, to be honest.
The music was shit.
Yeah.
The performances were weak.
It's the kind of thing where I thought there would be more to talk about, but honestly, it's so dull and so lifeless.
Really long as well. It's like 2 hours and 20 minutes or something. Like, it just goes on.
Yeah,
on.
like Cats is a brisk walk in the park comparatively.
Yeah, and something happens in that. Not much.
Yeah, Judi Dench gets horny for everybody. It says that Cats is sexier than this movie, and Cats is not sexy.
Cats is so unsexy it becomes sexy. That's the thing. No, what I'll say about Phantom, because I'm a big fan of Patrick Wilson, as you know. I consider him one of the finest American actors working today, and I say that with my full chest, listeners. But what I'll say is this: Patrick Wilson should have been the Phantom as well. Like, he's a better actor than fucking, and he can do anything. He could do anything. People always like to say like your Meryl Streeps can do anything, but I've seen this man play the grimiest nonce possible, and also play like the fucking I'm the boy next door and I'm a good bloke and and everything in between. Like, this man has range, darling. I mean, he's utterly wasted in this movie where he's just the boyfriend that no one wants her to get with.
Yeah, because but there again, but no one wants her to get with the Phantom either because he's just nowhere near as interesting.
But again,
either.
This is the problem with this movie, is that like we should want her to get with the Phantom, even though he's a monster and he's a horrible person and all this. The whole point is, he's the bad boy, you know? He's the fucking...
And, you know,
like, again,
we all want him to put us in his boat and take us on a nice little steamy, dirty weekend away.
This is a film for teenage girls to swoon over. And they gave it to Joel Schumacher, middle-aged homosexual. And I think that's the key problem with this. I mean, also, I think Schumacher's just not engaged with the material. Like, his direction in this is just nothing. I mean, I know that Joel Schumacher... He's got range in the sense that he's made some excellent films like Falling Down, and I would say The Lost Boys, and he's made some utter dreck in his time as well. But And we should say the late great Joel Schumacher as well. R.I.P.
We should, yeah. He passed away quite recently, didn't
R.I.P.
he?
But where was I going with this? Oh, yes. I just don't think he's engaged with the material. And also, from the little bit of research I did, it seems like Lloyd Webber was breathing down his neck on this movie.
Yeah.
Like, in pretty much every interview they did about this movie, they were together. And it seems like Lloyd Webber was very involved in the process. And this is something that I want to flag up. Like, Lloyd Webber has slagged off Cats. He said that Tom Hooper's Cats is like... he said it was just ridiculous. That was one of the quotes, right?
Lloyd Webber went so far as to get a therapy dog because apparently he was so beside himself with how Cats turned out that he had to get a therapy dog. That's a true story. That is absolutely true.
Yeah, I know. It's mad.
Absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, but like I think he stands by this movie, though, from what I was reading.
Yeah, which I'm not surprised because it's very...
This movie's more reverent,
much like...
I guess.
Yeah, it's more like his stage show, and it's more evocative of a lot of that kind of stuff, I guess. So I can see why he stands with it. Whereas Cats is an anomaly, and it's its own very unique beast.
Anyway, this podcast is nearly at 3 hours long. Let's Kino or Inferno this bad boy. Inferno.
Right.
Well, that was the Lloyd Webber Lunacy special. Mostly a Cats episode.
Yeah, with a little bit of Phantom at the end.
A little bit of Phantom at the end. So...
Cheeky little dribble of Phantom all over your face. Anyway.
Oh dear, you just have to lower the tone and cheapen it.
You talked about Cats for 2 hours. Let me have cum jokes.
Over 2 hours. I want it to be known that it was over 2 hours. So listen, Mark.
It's on social media, mate. It was over 2 hours.
So listen, Mark. The next episode we're going to do is going to be a guest star episode.
Mm-hmm.
The episode is going to be about anthologies by auteur directors. Namely, we are going to be covering the recent anthology film by Wes Anderson, The French Dispatch. And we're also going to be covering the relatively recent film, it was a couple of years ago now.
Fairly recent.
By the Coen brothers, The Ballad of Buster Scruggs. We are going to be joined by the elusive Adam Ragg, who was supposed to be on an episode about Dune and Lord of the Rings, which you may have noticed hasn't manifested.
Sadly, yes. R.I.P.
Sadly, we had some technical issues with that, and it wasn't doable. We may return to it in season 2, because I think it was a fun discussion, but we lost. I don't want to force myself through those movies again so quickly afterwards.
No, I really do not want to have to watch both of those films again.
No, I mean I will do in a couple of months. I'll be able to, but it's too recent. Anyway, the point is this: that's the next episode. Get ready for that. Apologies for this one if you've made it this far. If you've made it this far, you're a trooper, you're a scooper, and you're a midnight pooper. Anyway, it's goodbye from me.
It's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from me, McCavity!